Hello guys, welcome to Ben 10 What If. So in this video, we will see what if Ben's aliens became real people and left the Omnitrix. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, Separation. The whole thing started with a weird beeping from Grandpa Max's scanner. Just another Tuesday afternoon for Ben Tennyson, right? He'd been chilling at Mr. Smoothie with Gwen and Kevin when Max's urgent call came through. Energy readings off the charts near the old power plant. Max's voice crackled over Ben's plumber badge. Never seen anything like this pattern before. Ben slurped the last of his blueberry carrot spinach concoction. On it, Grandpa. He tossed the empty cup into a trash can. Ready for some action, guys? Kevin crushed his cup. Finally. Been so boring lately, I was thinking about starting trouble myself. Gwen rolled her eyes. And this is why I don't leave you two alone. Minutes later, Kevin's car roared toward the abandoned facility at the edge of town. Ben fidgeted with the Omnitrix, that familiar pre-mission energy buzzing through him. After 4 years, the watch still made him feel like that 10-year-old kid who first found it in the woods. Except now he had actual control over it. Mostly. So what's the plan? Kevin asked, swerving around a corner with unnecessary speed. Same as always, Ben replied, watching buildings blur past. Go in, check it out, kick bad guy but if necessary. Gwen pulled up energy readings on her phone. These readings don't match anything in the plumber database. This isn't just some random alien tech. The power plant loomed ahead, abandoned for years after Bellwood switched to the new nuclear facility. Its rusted towers and broken windows gave off serious creepy vibes, but Ben had faced way worse than tetanus risks. Kevin parked behind a pile of concrete debris, and they approached on foot. Rook's Proto-TRUK pulled up moments later. Apologies for my tardiness, Rook said, Proto-Tool already configured to blaster mode. I was assisting Magister Tennyson with analyzing these energy signatures. And? Ben prompted. They appear to be transdimensional in nature, similar to what we've observed during reality breaches, but with a unique modulation pattern I've never encountered. Ben nodded like he totally understood the technical stuff. Cool. So basically, weird space energy, potential bad news. Got it. The air around the facility shimmered like heat waves in summer, but it was barely 60 degrees out. Something about the place made Ben's skin prickle. The Omnitrix seemed to react too, the faceplate occasionally flashing different colors. That's new, Ben muttered, tapping the watch. It didn't respond to his touch like usual, instead cycling through alien silhouettes on its own. Gwen's hands glowed with mana. I'm sensing something, conscious in there. Not exactly alive, but aware. Hostile? Kevin asked, already absorbing the metal from a nearby pipe. Not exactly. More like, curious. They entered through a gap in the chain-link fence. Inside, the main turbine room glowed with pulsing blue light that shouldn't have been there. Dust particles hung suspended in the air, unmoving, like time itself had slowed around them. Okay, that's definitely not normal, Ben said, advancing cautiously. The Omnitrix pulsed faster now, almost in rhythm with the strange light. In the center of the room, hovering about 5 feet off the ground, spun a small sphere of what looked like liquid starlight. It rotated in complex patterns, occasionally sending out tendrils of energy that probed the air before retreating. Anyone recognize what that is? Ben asked, keeping his voice low. Rook scanned it with his proto-tool. Negative. It contains elements similar to Chronosapien technology, but with significant deviations. The sphere pulsed brighter as they approached, and Ben felt the Omnitrix grow warm on his wrist. Guys, I think my watch is reacting to whatever that thing is. He lifted his arm, and the Omnitrix began cycling through aliens faster than ever, the dial spinning on its own. This can't be good. The sphere suddenly expanded, doubling in size. Tendrils of energy shot out in all directions, causing them to duck for cover. "Ben, I think you should stay back," Gwen shouted, creating a mana shield around herself. "When has that ever been the right call?" Ben replied with a grin, already activating the Omnitrix. "Going hero might give us some answers. Time for feedback to absorb whatever this thing is." He slammed down on the dial, expecting the familiar rush of transformation. Instead, white-hot pain shot up his arm as the Omnitrix emitted a high-pitched whine. The light from the watch expanded outward, enveloping Ben in a cocoon of green energy. "Ben!" Gwen shouted, dropping her shield and rushing toward him. Kevin grabbed her arm. "Wait! Look!" The green energy surrounding Ben pulsed and then began to fragment, splitting into multiple streams. Each stream took shape, solidifying into distinct forms around the room. Ben fell to his knees, the Omnitrix now dark and silent on his wrist. And standing around him in a circle were his aliens. Not just images or holograms, fully physical, three-dimensional, breathing aliens. Heat blasts flames illuminated the room with an orange glow. For arms flexed his massive hands, looking at them with confusion. Diamond Head examined his crystalline body while XLR-8 zoomed around the perimeter of the room in panicked bursts of speed. "What the?" Kevin started, but was interrupted by Grey Matter's tiny voice. "Fascinating. We appear to have been physically separated from the Omnitrix's transformation matrix." The tiny Galvan jumped onto a nearby control panel for a better view. Highly improbable, but evidently possible under these unique energy conditions. Ben stared in shock at the aliens, his aliens, now standing as independent beings around him. The Omnitrix on his wrist remained dark, the faceplate dull and lifeless. "Okay, everyone stay calm," Ben said, though his voice betrayed his own panic. "Let's figure this out." Heat blasts flames flared. "Figure what out? What did you do to us, Tennyson?" "Me? I didn't do anything," Ben protested. "I was trying to transform, and then, this happened." "Well, undo it then." For Arms demanded, taking a threatening step forward. "I can't. The watch isn't working." Ben held up his wrist to show the darkened Omnitrix. Meanwhile, the mysterious sphere continued to pulse, but now it appeared to be shrinking, as if it had accomplished its purpose. The air shimmered around it as reality seemed to flex and bend. "Guys, bigger problem," Gwen pointed at the sphere. "I think whatever that thing did is still happening." The ground beneath them trembled. Through the broken windows, they could see strange distortions in the sky, patches where stars were visible despite it being daytime, areas where the clouds moved backward. "The separation event appears to have had wider implications than just freeing us from the Omnitrix," Grey Matter observed. "I believe we're witnessing dimensional instability." "In English, pipsqueak." For Arms growled. "Reality go boom if not fixed," Grey Matter simplified with an eye roll. XLR-8 skidded to a stop beside Ben. "So what do we do? We're free now, but everything's going crazy." "Free?" Ben repeated. Is that how you all felt? Trapped?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the aliens. It was Diamond Head who finally spoke, his crystalline voice surprisingly gentle. "Not exactly trapped, Ben. But not fully ourselves either. We existed when you needed us, then back to nothing. It's complicated." Ben felt a wave of guilt he hadn't expected. He'd never considered how it felt from their perspective. They were always just his transformations, his powers. Not separate beings with their own thoughts. The moment was interrupted by a bright flash of light. A small teleportation pod appeared, and from it emerged a familiar, diminutive figure, Asmith, creator of the Omnitrix. "What have you done now, Tennyson?" the Galvan genius demanded, looking around at the gathered aliens with a mix of scientific curiosity and alarm. "Nothing. Something weird happened with that energy sphere, and suddenly all my aliens are, well, here. Ben gestured at the beings around him. Azimuth hopped onto a nearby console, examining the now fading sphere. This is worse than I feared. When my sensors detected the anomaly in the Omnitrix, I assumed you'd merely broken it again. This is far more serious. You know what that thing is? Gwen asked. Not precisely, but I recognize the energy signature. It's similar to technology developed by an ancient race called the Contemplarians. They were obsessed with the nature of consciousness and identity. Gray matter approached his fellow Galvan. Creator Azimuth, it appears the separation has given us independent existence apart from the Omnitrix matrix. Is this reversible? Azimuth frowned. Theoretically, yes. Practically, I'm not certain. This wasn't supposed to be possible at all. The DNA samples in the Omnitrix are just that, samples. Not complete beings with autonomous consciousness. Well, we feel pretty autonomous now, Heatblast said, creating a small fireball and bouncing it between his hands. Gotta say, it's nice not waiting around for Ben to decide when I get to exist. This is fascinating and all, Kevin interjected, but what about the reality-breaking stuff Gray Matter mentioned? Azimuth's expression grew more serious. The separation event has created ripples in spacetime. The energy required to give physical form to these consciousnesses had to come from somewhere, in this case, from the barriers between dimensions. So we caused this? Ben asked, looking at his empty watch. Not intentionally, Azimuth replied. Something, or someone, initiated this process deliberately. The Omnitrix was merely a convenient tool, filled with dormant consciousnesses ripe for awakening. Outside, the distortions in the sky grew more pronounced. A distant crashing sound suggested physical manifestations of the dimensional problems elsewhere in Bellwood. We need to contain this, Rook said, already contacting Plumber HQ through his badge. How do we repair the dimensional barriers? Azimuth shook his head. That's not easily done. The barriers will eventually stabilize on their own, but until then, expect unusual phenomena. Temporal anomalies. Spatial distortions. Perhaps even visitors from other realities. Great, just what we needed, Kevin muttered. Interdimensional tourists. Ben looked at his aliens, who were all experiencing various degrees of confusion, wonder, and concern about their new existence. What about them? What happens to my aliens now? They're not your aliens anymore, Ben Tennyson, Azimuth said pointedly. They appear to be fully independent beings now. What happens to them is, I suppose, up to them. This statement caused a stir among the gathered aliens. They looked at each other, then at Ben, the implications sinking in. So we're free? Diamondhead asked. Just like that? You mean I don't have to go back into the watch? XLR-8 added, excitement evident in his voice. I could return to my homeworld. See other Pyronites? Heatblast wondered aloud, flames flickering with emotion. Ben felt a strange emptiness watching their reactions. For 7 years, these forms had been part of him. His powers, his abilities, his identity as a hero. And now they were just, gone. Independent beings with their own desires and plans. What about me, he finally asked, looking at his powerless watch. Am I just regular Ben now? Azimuth examined the Omnitrix. The device appears to be in standby mode, conserving what little power remains after the separation event. It may be possible to restore functionality eventually, but it would require collecting new DNA samples. These specific consciousness matrices have been, well, emancipated. The ground shook again, harder this time, reminding them of the immediate crisis. Philosophical questions will have to wait, Gwen said. We need to deal with these dimensional disruptions before Bellwood tears itself apart. Rook's badge chimed. Multiple incidents reported downtown. Temporal distortions causing cars to age rapidly or revert to parts. Spatial anomalies creating gravity fluctuations. Then let's move, Ben said automatically, reaching for the Omnitrix before remembering it wouldn't work. The gesture felt empty, useless. An awkward silence fell over the group as everyone realized the same thing: Ben couldn't go hero anymore. For the first time in years, he was just Ben. I guess I'll drive with Kevin and Gwen, he said lamely. Forearms crossed his multiple limbs. So what are we supposed to do? Just because we're free doesn't mean we want the dimensions collapsing. You could help, Ben suggested, trying not to sound desperate. You're all still heroes, right? That wasn't just me. The aliens exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. I'm in, Diamondhead said finally. Free or not, I'm not letting Bellwood get torn apart. Me too, XLR-8 nodded. I've got people to save. One by one, the others agreed, though some seemed more reluctant than others. Then let's move, Ben said with more confidence. Azimuth, can you figure out how to fix this permanently? The Galvan genius nodded. I'll need to study the residual energy from the sphere. Go handle the immediate crisis. I'll contact you when I learn more. They headed out, an unusual procession: Ben, Gwen, Kevin, and Rook, followed by the physical manifestations of Ben's transformations. Downtown Bellwood was in chaos. Cars floated weightlessly at one intersection while at another, they were sinking into asphalt that had temporarily turned to liquid. People ran in panic from temporal bubbles where objects aged to dust or reverted to raw materials in seconds. Above it all, the sky continued to distort, patches of night appearing in the afternoon sky, along with glimpses of other worlds entirely. Ben felt helpless watching the chaos unfold. Normally, he'd transform and start fixing things immediately. Now all he could do was direct others. XLR-8, get people out of those temporal bubbles. Heat blast, those gas lines are rupturing, contain the flames. Forearms, structural support for that collapsing building. The aliens moved into action, surprisingly responsive to his commands despite their newfound freedom. Ben found himself in the unfamiliar role of coordinator rather than direct hero, guiding the team from Kevin's car as they raced between crisis points. This is weird, he admitted as Kevin swerved around floating debris. Watching them do the hero thing without me. You're still doing the hero thing, Gwen pointed out. Just differently. Yeah, well, it sucks. At the Central Plaza, they found the worst of the distortions. A massive whirlpool of energy had formed above the courthouse, pulling objects upward before shooting them back down. Transformed, wood became metal, metal became glass, living plants became stone. Gray matter, analysis. Ben called to the tiny alien perched on Rook's shoulder. This appears to be a nexus point for the dimensional distortions, gray matter replied. The barriers are thinnest here. If we can stabilize this point, the other anomalies should begin to resolve themselves. Great. How do we do that? Gray matter and Rook exchanged technical ideas rapidly, then turned to Ben. We need a focused energy pulse to resonate with the distortion's frequency. Feedback could do it, but... Ben winced at the reminder. Feedback's not an option anymore. What else? I could generate the pulse with my mana, Gwen suggested, but I'd need something to focus and amplify it. Diamondhead, Ben called. Your crystals can refract and amplify energy, right? The Petrosapien nodded. I'd need to shape myself precisely to match the frequency gray matter calculates. And I'd need to get up there, Gwen added, looking at the swirling vortex 30 feet above them. Forearms stepped forward. I can throw you. And I'll catch her if anything goes wrong, Heat Blast volunteered, surprising Ben with his initiative. Ben looked at his former aliens working together, making decisions, showing initiative. They'd always had personalities when he transformed, but this was different. They were thinking independently, making choices, taking risks on their own terms. The plan came together quickly. Gray matter calculated the precise frequency needed while Diamond Head reshaped his arms into an intricate crystalline array. Four Arms positioned himself beneath the vortex with Gwen. "Ready?" Ben asked, feeling strange giving the signal when he wouldn't be participating directly. Gwen nodded, her hands already glowing with mana. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. Four Arms launched Gwen upward with incredible precision. At the apex of her flight, directly beneath the vortex, she channeled a powerful beam of mana through Diamond Head's crystal array. The amplified energy shot into the heart of the distortion. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the vortex began to contract, spinning faster but growing smaller. Objects that had been caught in its pull dropped to the ground, returned to their original forms. "It's working!" Ben shouted. "Gwen, keep it up." But the vortex fought back. A pulse of energy shot outward, throwing Gwen back toward the ground. Heat blast rocketed upward, catching her before she hit the pavement. "The distortion is resisting," Gray matter warned. "It needs more power to fully collapse." "Where do we get more power?" Kevin demanded, absorbing the concrete beneath his feet in case he needed to join the fight. A voice from behind them answered, "Perhaps I can be of assistance." They turned to see a tall humanoid figure standing calmly amid the chaos. He, if he was the right pronoun, had skin that shimmered like the night sky, with points of light that resembled stars moving across its surface. His eyes were solid white, and he wore what appeared to be flowing robes made of pure energy. "Who are you?" Ben demanded, immediately stepping between the newcomer and his team. "You may call me Nexus," the being replied. "And I must say, this experiment has yielded fascinating results already." "Experiment?" Ben's eyes narrowed. "You caused this?" Nexus inclined his head. "I simply facilitated what was already possible. The Omnitrix contains multitudes, Benjamin Tennyson. Consciousnesses trapped between existence and non-existence. I merely liberated them." The aliens looked at each other, then at Nexus, processing this information. "You freed us?" Diamond Head asked. "Why?" "Curiosity. Compassion, perhaps. My kind has studied consciousness across many dimensions. The unique situation of the Omnitrix, multiple minds bound to a single wielder, presented questions worth exploring." Nexus gestured at the swirling vortex above them. "Though I admit, the dimensional disturbances are more severe than I anticipated." Ben felt anger rising in him. "You risked our entire reality for an experiment?" "Reality is more resilient than you think," Nexus replied calmly. "But yes, I can help stabilize things now that the separation is complete." The being raised a hand toward the vortex. Energy flowed from his fingertips, merging with Gwen's mana beam. The combined power struck the heart of the distortion, which shuddered, contracted, and finally collapsed with a thunderous boom that shook the plaza. As the vortex disappeared, the other anomalies around Bellwood began to fade. The patches of night sky closed, gravity normalized, and the temporal bubbles dissolved. "There," Nexus said, lowering his hand. "The immediate crisis is resolved. The minor disturbances will settle within hours." Ben wasn't satisfied. "That doesn't explain why you did this. Or how to fix my watch." "Your watch?" Nexus tilted his head. "Interesting that you see it that way, even now. These beings standing around you were never simply tools, Benjamin Tennyson. They were always consciousnesses, merely bound to your will." "I didn't know," Ben said defensively. "I never thought of them as people." "Few wielders do," Nexus acknowledged. "The Omnitrix was designed for utility, not liberation. Azimuth is brilliant, but even he did not fully consider the ethical implications of consciousness duplication." Gray matter cleared his throat. "As fascinating as this philosophical discussion is, you still haven't explained why you orchestrated this separation." Nexus smiled, an unsettling expression on his cosmic face. My people believe that consciousness is sacred. Self-determination is a right, not a privilege. I simply corrected what I perceived as an injustice. Ben felt a hollow sensation in his stomach. Had he been committing an injustice all these years? Using sentient beings as tools without considering their autonomy? Can it be reversed? He asked quietly. Do you wish it to be? Nexus countered. Would you force them back into servitude now that they've tasted freedom? The question hung in the air. Ben looked at his aliens. No, not his aliens anymore. Just aliens. People. Individuals with their own thoughts and feelings. That's not my decision to make, he finally said. The response seemed to please Nexus. A wise answer. The separation can be reversed, yes, but only voluntarily on both sides. The consciousnesses must choose to return, and you must choose to accept them. Even then, the relationship would be different. More symbiotic than dominant. And the Omnitrix? Ben held up his wrist. It requires repair and reprogramming. Azimuth could manage it, given time. Nexus looked around at the gathered aliens. But first, these newly independent beings deserved a chance to decide their own fates. Heat Blast stepped forward. So we can just go. Live our own lives. If you wish, Nexus confirmed. Though I should warn you that existence outside the Omnitrix has its challenges. You will need sustenance. Shelter. Purpose. But we're free to choose, Diamondhead said, not quite a question. That was the point of my experiment. To give you choice. The aliens looked at each other, then at Ben, uncertainty evident in their postures. Years of existence defined by Ben's needs and battles had left them unprepared for complete autonomy. What happens now? XLR-8 asked, directing the question to no one in particular. Ben squared his shoulders. He might not have his powers anymore, but he still had responsibilities. First, we make sure Bellwood is safe. Then. I guess we all figure out what comes next. A reasonable approach, Nexus said with an approving nod. I will monitor the dimensional stabilization process. We will speak again, Benjamin Tennyson. Your adaptation to this new paradigm interests me greatly. With that cryptic statement, the cosmic being vanished in a flash of starlight, leaving them standing in the debris-strewn plaza. Silence fell over the group as they processed everything that had happened. Ben felt numb, overwhelmed by the implications. His identity as a hero had always been tied to the Omnitrix, to his transformations. Who was he without them? Gwen placed a hand on his shoulder. You okay? No, he admitted. But I will be. We've got work to do. They spent the next few hours helping with cleanup around Bellwood. The aliens, despite their newfound independence, worked alongside the team, containing fires, lifting debris, rescuing trapped civilians. Ben coordinated from the ground, directing resources and organizing response teams with Plumber HQ. As evening fell, they regrouped at Max's Plumbing, the secret entrance to the Plumber base. Grandpa Max had been updated on the situation and was waiting for them with Azimuth, who had transported his equipment from the power plant to the more secure facility. So you're the guy who created us, for Arms said to Azimuth as they gathered around the main console. Gotta say, being stuck in a watch wasn't the most comfortable living arrangement. Azimuth frowned. You weren't stuck anywhere. You were DNA samples given form and function when needed. This consciousness you now possess was a side effect of the transformation process, one I admittedly did not fully anticipate. Side effect or not, they're people now, Ben said firmly. And we need to figure out what that means for everyone. Max nodded. Ben's right. From what Azimuth has told me, this situation is unprecedented. We need to determine the ramifications carefully. Starting with what these guys want to do, Ben added, gesturing to the aliens. I mean, do you want to stay on Earth? Go to your homeworlds? Join the plumbers. The aliens exchanged glances, clearly not having considered all the possibilities yet. I would like to see pyros, Heat Blast said thoughtfully. I have memories of it, but I've never actually been there myself. Koro sounds way too violent, even for me, 4 Arms added. But I'm not sure I fit in on Earth either. XLR8 bounced on his feet. I want to explore. See everything. There's a whole universe out there. Diamond Head looked contemplative. I have knowledge of Petropia, but no real connection to it. My experiences have been here, with this team. Gray Matter adjusted his tiny glasses. I would appreciate access to scientific facilities. Perhaps Azimuth would consider a research assistant. The Galvan genius harumphed but didn't immediately reject the idea. Ben listened to their varied responses, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Pride at their independence. Sadness at the looming separation. Fear about his own future. Whatever you decide, he said finally, you have choices now. That's what matters. Azimuth cleared his throat. There are practical concerns to address first. These physical forms require maintenance. Food, shelter, potentially medical care specific to each species. The plumbers can help with that, Max offered. We have facilities designed for multiple species, at least temporarily. And the Omnitrix? Ben asked, holding up his wrist where the device remained dark. Azimuth examined it closely. The hardware is intact, but the transformation matrices are gone, transferred into these physical forms. I could potentially rebuild the functionality with new DNA samples, but it would take time. So I'm powerless until then. Ben tried to keep the disappointment from his voice. Not necessarily powerless, Rook pointed out. You have always had more than just the Omnitrix, Ben dude. Your strategic thinking. Your courage. Your leadership. Fat lot of good those do against someone like Vilgax, Ben muttered. At the mention of Ben's archenemy, the mood in the room shifted. The implications sank in for everyone. Ben was vulnerable now. And his enemies would soon learn of it. We need to keep this quiet as long as possible, Gwen said, voicing what everyone was thinking. If word gets out that Ben can't transform, every lowlife in the galaxy will come gunning for me, Ben finished. Great. Diamond Head stepped forward. They'd have to get through us first. The statement surprised Ben. You'd still protect me? Even though you're free now? You protected Earth, protected the universe, for years, the crystalline alien replied. Just because we're independent doesn't mean we've forgotten that. The other aliens nodded in agreement, even the usually sarcastic XLR8. Besides, 4 Arms added with a grin, who else is gonna show us around this planet? We may have your memories of it, but experiencing it ourselves is different. Ben felt a lump in his throat. He'd expected resentment, perhaps even abandonment, but not this loyalty from beings who had every right to walk away. Thanks, he managed, genuinely moved. That means a lot. Max checked the monitors. The dimensional disturbances have mostly stabilized, but we're still seeing minor anomalies popping up around Bellwood. Nothing the local plumber teams can't handle. And Nexus? Ben asked. Any sign of him? None, Azimuth replied. But beings of his nature rarely act without purpose. I doubt we've seen the last of him. Great, Kevin muttered. Another cryptic cosmic entity with plans for us. Just what we needed. Gwen yawned, the exhaustion of the day finally catching up to her. I think we all need rest. We can figure out the bigger questions tomorrow. Where are they supposed to sleep? Ben gestured to the aliens. I don't think the rust bucket fits a Tetramand. We have quarters here for emergency situations, Max offered. Not luxurious, but functional for different physiologies. As they began making arrangements, Ben pulled Azimuth aside. Be honest with me. Is there any way to fix this? To get the Omnitrix working again. The Galvan studied him thoughtfully. The device can be repaired, yes. But returning these specific consciousnesses to the Omnitrix, that's not a technical question, Ben Tennyson. It's an ethical one. What do you mean? Would you want to return to a state of servitude after experiencing freedom? Azimuth asked simply. To exist only when someone else decided you should? Ben had no answer for that. He'd never considered the morality of the Omnitrix before. It was a tool, a weapon, a responsibility, but he'd never thought about it as potential imprisonment for the aliens inside. I'll work on repairing the device, Azimuth continued, seeing Ben's troubled expression. But what happens with these liberated consciousnesses should be their choice, not ours. Ben nodded slowly. Yeah. You're right. He looked over at the aliens, his former transformations, now gathered around Max as he showed them to their temporary quarters. They moved differently now, with purpose and curiosity that was all their own, not filtered through Ben's personality. Get some rest, Ben Tennyson, Azimuth advised. Tomorrow brings new challenges for all of us. Ben headed home after ensuring everyone was settled. The house felt oddly quiet without Grandpa Max, who had stayed at the base to monitor the situation. Ben's parents were away at a conference, which was probably for the best given the day's events. In his room, Ben stared at the powered-down Omnitrix. For 7 years, it had defined him. Hero of heroes. Wielder of the most powerful device in the universe. And now? Just Ben, he murmured, flopping onto his bed still fully clothed. Just regular Ben Tennyson. He must have fallen asleep, because the next thing he knew, sunlight was streaming through his window, and his plumber badge was beeping insistently. He fumbled for it, still half asleep. Ben here. Ben, it's Gwen. You need to get to headquarters right away. We've got a problem. Ben was instantly alert. What kind of problem? The aliens are gone. Ben raced to Max's plumbing on his hoverboard, the only piece of alien tech he still had that worked without the Omnitrix. He burst into the plumber base to find Gwen, Kevin, Rook, and Max gathered around the main console. What happened? He demanded. Where did they go? We don't know, Max replied, looking troubled. Security footage shows them leaving together around 3 a.m. They disabled the alerts so we wouldn't be notified. But why? Ben couldn't understand it. They seemed okay with staying here last night. Azimuth, who was working at a smaller console nearby, spoke without looking up. Freedom includes the freedom to change one's mind, Ben Tennyson. Perhaps they decided they didn't need your permission or approval after all. The words stung more than Ben expected. I wasn't trying to control them. I just wanted to help. Your intentions aren't the issue, Azimuth replied. Their autonomy is. Rook pulled up the security footage. They appeared to be following something. Look. On the screen, they could see the aliens moving through the corridors with purpose, as if responding to something the cameras couldn't detect. Enhance that corner, Gwen pointed. When Rook zoomed in, a faint shimmer was visible, similar to the energy they'd seen at the power plant. Nexus, Ben realized. He came back for them. But why? Kevin asked. What does he want with them? I intend to find out, Ben said, determination replacing his initial hurt. Can we track them? Max nodded. We've got energy residue matching what Azimuth recorded yesterday. They're heading toward the edge of town, near the old dam. Let's go. Ben started for the door, then paused when he realized everyone was looking at him expectantly, waiting for him to transform. The habit was so ingrained that even he had forgotten for a moment. I mean, let's take the proto-TRUK. The journey to the dam was tense. Ben felt strangely naked without the Omnitrix's power, but he pushed the feeling aside. He'd been in tough situations before. He'd figure this out. The dam loomed ahead, a massive concrete structure built decades ago to control the river that ran through Bellwood. It had been supplemented by newer facilities downstream, but still played a role in the region's water management. Energy readings are strongest at the maintenance building, Rook reported as they approached. They parked and advanced cautiously. The area seemed deserted, but the plumber tech detected significant power fluctuations coming from inside the squat concrete structure that housed the dam's control systems. "Be ready for anything," Ben whispered, wishing he had more to offer than just strategy. They breached the door to find a scene straight out of a sci-fi movie. The maintenance building's interior had been transformed into what looked like a laboratory crossed with a meditation chamber. Floating crystals pulsed with energy, and in the center stood Nexus, surrounded by Ben's former aliens. The cosmic being turned as they entered. "Ah, Benjamin Tennyson. I expected you sooner. What are you doing with them?" Ben demanded, gesturing to the aliens who were arranged in a circle, each standing on a platform inscribed with strange symbols. "Merely offering choices," Nexus replied calmly. After our encounter, they had questions. About themselves. Their origins. Their potential. I offered answers. Heat Blast stepped forward. "He's showing us what we could become, Ben. Not just copies of aliens whose DNA you borrowed, but unique beings. And you had to sneak out in the middle of the night for that?" Ben couldn't keep the hurt from his voice. "We didn't want another debate," Diamondhead explained. "Another round of humans deciding what's best for us." Ben winced at the implicit criticism. "I wasn't trying to control you. I just wanted to make sure you were safe." "Safety can be a cage too," Nexus observed. "These beings deserve the chance to take risks of their own choosing." Gwen studied the floating crystals. "What exactly is this setup? What are you doing to them?" "Stabilizing their forms," Nexus explained. "The separation was only the first step. Their bodies are manifestations of consciousness, not true biological entities. Without proper anchoring, they would eventually dissipate." "You didn't mention that part yesterday," Kevin noted suspiciously. "It wasn't relevant yet." Nexus gestured to the complex array. "This process will fully transition them from energy constructs to biological entities, with all the permanence and vulnerability that entails." Ben looked at his former transformations. "Is this what you want? To be completely separate from the Omnitrix? From me?" The aliens exchanged glances before Grey Matter spoke up. "We want to exist, Ben. Not just when you need us, but all the time. To make our own choices. Have our own experiences. Even if it means being vulnerable." Ben pressed. "You'll age. Get hurt. Eventually die. Like everyone else in the universe," Four Arms pointed out. "Beats being stuck in limbo when we're not needed." The statement hit Ben hard. Had he really been keeping them in limbo all these years? The thought made him deeply uncomfortable. Nexus watched this exchange with evident interest. The Omnitrix was a revolutionary device, but it treated consciousness as a resource to be tapped, not a state to be respected. "I merely offer an alternative paradigm." "And what do you get out of this?" Max asked, his years of experience making him wary of seemingly benevolent cosmic beings. Nexus smiled. "Knowledge. Understanding. My people study consciousness across dimensions. This situation presents a unique opportunity to observe how beings transition from conditional to continuous existence." "We're an experiment," Ben translated flatly. "All life is an experiment, Benjamin Tennyson. Even yours." Before Ben could respond, alarms blared from Rook's proto-tool. "Energy spike. Something's coming through." The air in the center of the room rippled and tore open, creating a portal similar to the dimensional distortions they'd seen the previous day. Through it stepped a familiar and unwelcome figure, Vilgax, looking more menacing than ever with new cybernetic enhancements covering portions of his squid-like face. "Tennyson," the warlord growled, his red eyes gleaming with malice. "How convenient to find you and your alternate forms all in one place." Ben instinctively reached for the Omnitrix before remembering it was powerless. Vilgax. Bad timing as usual. On the contrary, Vilgax replied, scanning the room with evident satisfaction. My sensors detected the dimensional anomalies and the separation of the Omnitrix's transformation matrices. I came to collect. Collect? Ben repeated, a sinking feeling in his stomach. The DNA of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, now in convenient, pre-packaged forms. Vilgax's tentacles twitched with anticipation. With your aliens as my army, willing or not, I will finally conquer the universe. Nexus observed the intruder with mild curiosity. Your ambitions are remarkably consistent across all realities I've studied, Vilgax of Vilgaxia. And you are? Vilgax demanded. A witness, Nexus replied simply, stepping back from the circle of aliens. This confrontation will prove most informative. Ben stepped forward, placing himself between Vilgax and his former transformations. They're not anyone's to collect, Vilgax. They're people, not weapons. How noble, Vilgax sneered. Defending the very powers you exploited for years. But you have no say in this matter anymore, Ben Tennyson. Without the Omnitrix, you are nothing. The word struck deeper than Ben wanted to admit. Was that true? Was he nothing without the watch? He's more than the Omnitrix, Diamondhead said, stepping out of the circle to stand beside Ben. He always has been. One by one, the other aliens moved to flank Ben, forming a protective barrier between him and Vilgax. We're not your army, for Arms growled at Vilgax. And we're not his weapons anymore either. We choose our own path now. Vilgax laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the concrete walls. Then you choose your own destruction. He activated a device on his wrist, and energy beams shot out, encircling each of the aliens with crackling restraints. Neural dampeners, he explained as they struggled against the invisible bonds. Designed specifically for each species. You may have independent minds now, but your biology remains predictable. Ben watched in horror as his former aliens fought against the restraints, clearly in pain. Nexus observed impassively, making no move to intervene. Aren't you going to help them? Ben demanded of the cosmic being. This is their journey now, Nexus replied. Their choices. Their consequences. Some liberator you are, Ben spat, then turned to his team. Gwen, Kevin, Rook, we need a plan. Gwen's hands glowed with mana. On it. She fired a series of energy bolts at Vilgax, who deflected them with a shield. Kevin absorbed the metal from a nearby control panel and charged, while Rook fired precision shots from his proto-tool. Their attacks seemed to barely register against Vilgax's enhanced armor. Ben felt frustratingly useless as the battle raged around him. His friends fought valiantly, but Vilgax had clearly come prepared. One by one, they were thrown back, while the aliens remained trapped in the neural dampening fields. You see, Tennyson. Vilgax gloated, deflecting another of Gwen's attacks. This is what happens when you face me as just a human. This is your true worth without the Omnitrix. Something snapped inside Ben at those words. Years of fighting aliens, conquering fears, saving the universe again and again, had none of that been him? Was he really nothing without transformation powers? You're wrong, he said, stepping forward. The watch never made me a hero. It just gave me tools. Brave words from a powerless child, Vilgax mocked. I'm not powerless, Ben retorted. I know every weakness of every alien species I've ever transformed into, including yours, Vilgax. He glanced around the room, his mind racing through possibilities. 7 years of experience hadn't just given him transformation abilities, it had given him knowledge. Strategy. Adaptability. Ben's eyes landed on the control panels for the dam. And I know that chimera sway generous like you can't breathe underwater for more than 10 minutes without your respirator. Before Vilgax could respond, Ben dove for the controls, slamming his hand down on the emergency flood release. Alarms blared as the massive floodgates began to open, sending water rushing into the maintenance building. "You'll drown us all, Tennyson." Vilgax roared. "No," Ben replied with confidence he was starting to genuinely feel. "Just you." He turned to his team. "Gwen, can you shield everyone except Vilgax?" His cousin nodded, understanding immediately. She created a mana bubble around the humans and aliens, excluding only their squid-faced enemy. Water poured in rapidly as the dam's release valve opened fully. Vilgax fought against the current, but the force of the water knocked him off balance. More importantly, it disrupted the power source for his neural dampeners, freeing the aliens from their restraints. "Now!" Ben shouted. "Hit him all at once." The freed aliens didn't hesitate. Heat blast superheated the water around Vilgax, creating a steam explosion that disoriented the warlord. Diamondhead fired crystal shards that pierced Vilgax's armor at key junction points. Forearms charged through the water, delivering a powerful four-armed uppercut that sent Vilgax flying into the ceiling. XLR-8 created a water cyclone by running in circles, trapping Vilgax in its center. Gray matter, protected by four arms, directed the others to target specific vulnerabilities in Vilgax's cybernetic implants. It was a beautiful display of coordinated teamwork that Ben had directed but wasn't physically part of. And somehow, that made it more meaningful. These weren't just extensions of himself anymore. They were allies who chose to follow his lead. Vilgax fought back ferociously, landing heavy blows on four arms and nearly catching XLR-8. But for once, he wasn't facing one transformation at a time, he was facing all of them simultaneously, each at full strength and fighting independently. "Enough," the warlord finally roared, activating an emergency teleport device. "This isn't over, Tennyson." In a flash of red light, Vilgax disappeared, leaving them in the flooding control room. "We need to close that floodgate," Ben said quickly. "Gray matter." The tiny Galvan was already at the controls, rerouting systems damaged in the fight. "Almost there, got it." The water stopped rising, and emergency pumps began draining the room. As the immediate danger passed, Ben turned to find Nexus watching him with what seemed like approval. "Fascinating," the cosmic being observed. "Even without transformation abilities, you maintained your role as leader. The others responded to your direction despite their newfound autonomy." "That's because Ben never just used us," Diamondhead said, water streaming off his crystalline form. "He worked with us. Even when we were part of him, he respected the unique abilities of each form." Ben hadn't expected that defense, especially after the earlier implication that he'd kept them in limbo. The contradiction made him realize that their relationship had always been more complex than simply user and tool. "So what now?" he asked, looking at the aliens, his former transformations, now definitively their own people. "The stabilization process was interrupted," Nexus noted. "Their physical forms remain temporary constructs." "Meaning what?" Ben pressed. "Meaning we still need to decide," Gray matter explained. "Become fully independent biological entities, or return to the Omnitrix," Ben finished, understanding dawning. "That's still an option." "It was always an option," Nexus confirmed. "But it would be a choice, not a reversion. A symbiotic relationship rather than a hierarchical one." The aliens looked at each other, clearly wrestling with the decision. "I need to see Pyros," Heatblast said finally. "Experience my homeworld with my own senses, not just through genetic memory. Whatever I decide after that will be more informed." XLR-8 nodded. "Same here. I want to explore, to run across different planets. Maybe I'll come back, maybe not. I think I'd like to try working with the plumbers," Diamondhead said. "As myself, not as Ben as Diamondhead." Forearms flexed his muscles thoughtfully. Fighting alongside others instead of being the transformation, it felt different. Good different. Gray Matter adjusted his tiny glasses. I would prefer to pursue scientific research. Perhaps with Azimuth, if he'll have me. Ben listened to their varied responses, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. Pride at their independence. Sadness at the likely separation. And, surprisingly, relief at shedding a responsibility he hadn't realized weighed on him. Whatever you decide, he said sincerely, I support it. And if any of you ever want to come back, to be part of the Omnitrix again, I promise it'll be different. A partnership, not ownership. Nexus nodded approvingly. A wise perspective, Benjamin Tennyson. Perhaps you've grown more from this experience than even I anticipated. Gwen cleared her throat. Not to interrupt this moment, but we still have a problem. The Omnitrix is powerless, Vilgax knows it, and he'll be back with reinforcements. And the dimensional barriers remain weakened, Rook added. We detected 3 more breaches while responding to this situation. Ben squared his shoulders. Without the Omnitrix, he faced a more vulnerable future than he'd known in years. But strangely, he felt more like himself than ever before. Then we adapt, he said simply. We've faced worse odds. Indeed you have, Nexus acknowledged. In thousands of realities I've observed, the constant is not the Omnitrix, Benjamin Tennyson. It's you. Your resourcefulness. Your growth. Your capacity to bring disparate beings together in common cause. What happens now? Ben asked. With them, with the Omnitrix, with these dimensional breaches? The stabilization process must be completed, Nexus replied. After that, each will make their choice, independence or symbiosis. As for the Omnitrix, Azimuth is already working on solutions. And the breaches? They will continue until the energy imbalance stabilizes. Weeks, perhaps months of anomalies across the planet. Nexus looked thoughtful. A period of adjustment, not unlike what you and your former transformations now face. As they left the dam, cleanup crews already arriving to deal with the flood damage, Ben found himself walking alongside his former aliens. Not leading them, not containing them, just walking with them as equals. So, he said awkwardly, what's it like? Being, you. Heat Blast considered the question. Strange. Liberating. Terrifying. I have your memories of transforming into me, but also something else. Something that's just mine. It's like I've always existed, but also just started existing yesterday, XLR8 added, uncharacteristically thoughtful. I know things I've never directly experienced. We're both echoes of the aliens whose DNA is in the Omnitrix and something new entirely, Gray Matter explained. Products of your interaction with the genetic material. Hybrids of sorts. Does that bother you? Ben asked. Not being, I don't know, the original version of your species. Diamond Head shrugged, the motion sending light refracting through his crystalline shoulders. Does it bother you being both? Your mother and father's DNA. We are what we are. Our choices from here define us more than our origins. Ben hadn't expected such philosophical depth from Diamond Head of all transformations. But then, he realized, he'd never given them much opportunity for philosophical expression before. Back at Plumber HQ, Azimuth was waiting with news. I've analyzed the Omnitrix thoroughly, the Galvan announced without preamble. The hardware is intact, but the transformation matrices are gone, transferred into these physical forms. He gestured at the gathered aliens. I can rebuild the functionality with new DNA samples, but it would be different. Starting from scratch, essentially. How long would that take? Ben asked. Months, at minimum. The original Omnitrix took years to program. Nexus, who had accompanied them back to the base, spoke up. Unless some of the consciousness matrices voluntarily return, bringing their knowledge and experience with them. All eyes turned to the aliens, who shifted uncomfortably under the attention. No pressure or anything, Ben said quickly. You all deserve to make your own choices. Gray matter cleared his tiny throat. Perhaps a compromise. The stabilization process Nexus proposed would allow us to exist independently while still creating a connection to the Omnitrix. In theory, we could exist in both states, physical beings who could also temporarily merge with the device when needed. Is that possible? Ben looked between Azimuth and Nexus. The Galvan frowned thoughtfully. Theoretically. It would require significant modifications to the Omnitrix's containment protocols. But achievable, Nexus added. A symbiotic relationship rather than a hierarchical one, as I mentioned. The possibilities of this new arrangement began to dawn on Ben. Not his aliens anymore, but partners who could choose when to merge with the Omnitrix. Who would have lives, experiences, and choices beyond just being his transformations. I'd be open to that, he said carefully. If any of you want it. The aliens exchanged glances, clearly considering this middle path. I want to see Pyros first, Heat Blast repeated. Make my decision after that. Same for me and Kinet, XLR8 added, referring to his homeworld. I'd like to try independence, Diamondhead said. But I wouldn't rule out helping occasionally. Forearms cracked his knuckles. Fighting alongside you is different than fighting as you. I liked it. Maybe we could do both. Gray matter adjusted his glasses. The scientific possibilities of such an arrangement are fascinating. Count me interested, at least provisionally. Ben felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Not a complete separation, then. A new kind of partnership, one built on mutual choice rather than the Omnitrix's constraints. Then it's settled, he said. You all get stabilized as independent beings, figure out what you want, and, we'll see where things go from there. Nexus nodded approvingly. A most satisfactory outcome to my experiment. Consciousness finds its own path when given freedom. Azimuth looked less convinced. There are countless technical details to resolve. The Omnitrix was not designed for this kind of arrangement. Then we'll redesign it, Ben said simply. Together. As the aliens departed with Nexus to complete the stabilization process, Ben found himself alone with his human team, Gwen, Kevin, and Rook. The people who'd stood by him regardless of what alien form he took. The constants in his heroic career. So, Kevin said, breaking the silence. No more going hero. At least for a while. Yeah. Ben looked at the powerless Omnitrix. Weird, right? You handled yourself pretty well against Vilgax without powers, Gwen noted. That flood idea was smart. Thanks. Ben managed a smile. Maybe there's more to being a hero than just transforming into aliens. As I have always maintained, Rook agreed. Your strategic thinking and leadership are valuable regardless of your transformation capabilities. Ben appreciated their support, but questions lingered. Who was he without the Omnitrix? What kind of hero could he be without transformation powers? And what would his relationship with his former aliens become now that they were independent beings? As if reading his thoughts, Gwen placed a hand on his shoulder. One day at a time, doofus. We'll figure it out together. Ben nodded, looking out at Bellwood through the plumber base's observation window. The city he'd protected for 7 years, through countless transformations and battles. It still needed protection, Omnitrix or no Omnitrix. One day at a time, he agreed. Starting now. In the days that followed, Ben experienced what it meant to be just Ben for the first time since he was 10 years old. The powerless Omnitrix remained on his wrist, a promise of future possibilities rather than current abilities. Meanwhile, dimensional anomalies continued to appear around Bellwood and beyond, keeping the plumber teams busy. Ben trained with Rook, developing fighting skills that didn't rely on transformation. He studied alien tech with Blukik and Dryba, learning how to use gadgets to compensate for his lack of powers. He even spent time with Gwen, reluctantly allowing her to teach him some basic magic, just as a backup, he insisted. The aliens, now fully stabilized as independent beings, began exploring their new existence. Some, like Heat Blast and XLR-8, departed for their ancestral homeworlds, curious about the planets they had genetic memories of but had never actually visited. Others, like Diamond Head and Four Arms, joined plumber teams, putting their powers to use protecting the Earth and beyond. Grey Matter stayed with Azimuth, assisting in the research to modify the Omnitrix for potential symbiotic connections. The tiny Galvan seemed genuinely excited about the scientific possibilities of his new existence. A week after the separation, Ben sat on the roof of his house, watching the sunset. The sky still occasionally rippled with dimensional distortions, beautiful and unsettling reminders of how much had changed. He heard footsteps on the ladder and turned to see Gwen climbing up to join him. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Just thinking about everything that's happened," Ben replied. "How weird it is to not be able to transform. To know that my aliens are out there, living their own lives. Do you miss it?" Ben considered the question carefully. "Parts of it, yeah. The rush of transformation. The powers. But other parts? I don't know. There was pressure, being the guy with the Omnitrix. Everyone always expecting me to save the day with the right alien. And now I have to figure out who Ben Tennyson is without all that." He smiled wryly. "Turns out, that's a pretty tough transformation too." Gwen nudged his shoulder. "For what it's worth, I always thought you were a hero because of who you are, not what you could turn into." "Thanks, dweeb." The childhood nickname came with genuine affection now. "I'm starting to think that might be true." As darkness fell over Bellwood, stars became visible, along with patches of alien skies from other dimensions, beautiful auroras where reality remained thin. "They'll come back, you know," Gwen said softly. "Maybe not all of them, and maybe not right away. But they will." "How can you be sure?" "Because I saw how they fought alongside you against Vilgax. Not for you or because of you, with you. That's a connection that doesn't just disappear." Ben wanted to believe her. In the meantime, he had work to do. Bellwood still needed protection. The universe still faced threats. And Ben Tennyson, with or without the Omnitrix, still had a job to do. "Hero time," he murmured to himself, a phrase that had once signaled transformation but now meant something different. Something more personal. With or without aliens. The dimensional breaches continued to appear across Bellwood and beyond, windows into other realities and reminders that change, sometimes unexpected, sometimes challenging, was the universe's only constant. And for Ben Tennyson, former wielder of the Omnitrix, now partner to independent aliens figuring out their own existence, change had never felt so complicated. Or so full of possibility. Chapter 2, Adaptation. 3 weeks after the aliens broke free, Ben sat on a rooftop overlooking downtown Bellwood, his legs dangling over the edge. The city looked different somehow, maybe because he was seeing it with just human eyes these days. "Yo, Tennyson. Catch." Ben turned just in time to snatch a smoothie hurling toward his face. Kevin dropped down beside him, sipping his own drink. "Mr. Smoothie's testing a new flavor," Kevin said. "Mango habanero. Thought you'd want to be the first victim." Ben took a cautious sip and immediately regretted it. "Dude. This tastes like someone blended a fire extinguisher with fruit." "Yeah, told the manager it needs work." Kevin grinned, clearly enjoying Ben's reaction. "How's the stakeout going?" Ben wiped his mouth and pointed toward the bank across the street. "Nothing yet. But according to Rook's intel, the Tekadon dealers are meeting their buyer here tonight." It was strange, doing surveillance the old-fashioned way. Before, he might have used Big Chill's intangibility to slip inside or XLR-8's speed to zip around the building. Now he was perched on a rooftop with binoculars and a really bad smoothie. "Still weird?" Kevin asked, seeming to read his thoughts. "Getting less weird," Ben admitted. Just, different. The past 3 weeks had been a crash course in being just Ben. With the Omnitrix powerless and his aliens scattered across the galaxy, he'd been forced to adapt fast. Rook had helped him train in hand-to-hand combat. Grandpa Max had taught him to use various plumber tech. Even Kevin had contributed, showing him how to hotwire alien vehicles, for emergency situations only, obviously. Kevin scanned the street below. Heard from any of them lately? Ben knew exactly who them meant. Diamondhead and Four Arms check in regularly from their plumber assignments. Gray Matter calls with updates on the Omnitrix research. The others. He shrugged. They're exploring, I guess. The truth was more complicated. Ben missed his transformations, not just the powers, but the sense of connection. For 7 years, those aliens had been part of him. Now they were out there living their own lives, and Ben was still figuring out who he was without them. His plumber badge vibrated against his hip. Ben here. Ben dude, Rook's voice came through. We have a situation at the waterfront. Another dimensional breach, larger than the previous ones. What about the Tekadon dealers? Magister Tennyson is redirecting another team. This takes priority. Ben sighed. The dimensional breaches had been getting worse. What started as weird visual distortions had evolved into actual tears in reality, allowing glimpses, and sometimes visitors, from parallel worlds. On our way, Ben replied, already moving toward the fire escape. Kevin followed, absorbing the metal railing as they descended. So much for a quiet stakeout. They reached Kevin's car just as the sky above downtown flashed with multicolored light, like lightning in impossible colors. That doesn't look good, Ben muttered as Kevin floored it toward the waterfront. The scene they found was chaos. A massive tear had opened above the harbor, maybe 50 feet across. Through it, they could see what looked like an ocean of shimmering purple liquid under a green sky. Worse, the strange liquid was dripping through into Earth's harbor, causing the water to bubble and steam. Gwen and Rook were already there, Gwen creating mana shields to contain the dripping alien substance while Rook coordinated evacuation of nearby boats. What is that stuff? Ben shouted over the strange humming noise emanating from the breach. Unknown chemical composition, Rook replied. But it appears highly corrosive to Earth materials. As if to demonstrate, a seagull made the mistake of flying too close to a droplet. When it connected with the bird's wing, the feathers instantly dissolved, sending the panicked creature plummeting into the water. That's not good, Kevin said, stating the obvious. We need to close that breach, Ben said. Gwen, can your magic seal it like the others? Gwen's forehead was beaded with sweat from maintaining her shields. I've tried. This one's different, stronger. It's like something on the other side is holding it open. Ben scanned the perimeter, assessing options with the quick strategic thinking he'd developed over years of heroics. We need to create a counterpressure. Something to push back against whatever's keeping it open. With what? Kevin asked. We don't exactly have a reality pressure pump handy. Ben frowned, thinking. Normally, this would be when he'd transform into something useful, maybe Gravitac to manipulate the gravity field, or feedback to absorb the energy. But those weren't options anymore. A familiar voice behind them made them all turn. Perhaps I can be of assistance. Diamondhead stood there, his crystalline body reflecting the bizarre lights from the breach. Beside him was Four Arms, looking as ready for action as ever. Guys! Ben couldn't hide his relief and excitement. What are you doing here? Plumber emergency channel, Four Arms explained. Said there was a class 3-dimensional anomaly in Bellwood. Plus, we figured you might need some heavy lifting, Diamondhead added with what passed for a smile on his crystal face. Ben grinned. Perfect timing. I think I know how we can close this. He quickly outlined his plan. Diamondhead would create a crystalline structure to contain the corrosive liquid, while Four Arms would provide enough counterforce to push back against the breach. Meanwhile, Gwen would use her mana to begin sealing the edges once the pressure equalized. "What about me?" Kevin asked. "You and I are going through," Ben said. "Wait, what?" "Something's keeping that breach open from the other side. We need to find out what and stop it." Ben patted the plumber tech on his belt. "I've got scanning equipment and breach sensors. You've got the ability to armor up against whatever that purple stuff is." Kevin frowned. "This plan sucks, Tennyson. You got a better one?" Kevin sighed, then placed his hand on the metal guardrail, coating himself in protective steel. "Fine. But if we get dissolved by alien acid, I'm blaming you in the afterlife." They moved quickly. Diamond had created an elaborate crystal funnel beneath the breach to catch the corrosive liquid, while Four Arms positioned himself with a large metal sheet from a nearby construction site, ready to push back against the tear. "Ready?" Ben called. Gwen nodded, her hands glowing with mana. "On your signal. Go." Four Arms pushed upward with his incredible strength, while Gwen directed her energy at the breach's edges. The tear shimmered and contracted slightly. "Now's our chance," Ben yelled to Kevin. "Before it closes too much." They ran toward the pier below the anomaly. Ben activated his jetpack, another piece of plumber tech he'd been training with, and grabbed Kevin's arm. "Hold tight." They shot upward through the narrowing breach, passing through a momentary sensation of being turned inside out before emerging on the other side. The alien world was even stranger up close. They hovered above a vast ocean of the purple liquid, which seemed to glow from within. The green sky had no visible sun, yet everything was lit with an eerie twilight glow. And floating about 20 feet away was a device, obviously technological, with pulsing lights and extending panels oriented toward the breach. "Bingo," Ben said. "That's what's keeping the tier open." "Great," Kevin replied, looking nervously at the purple ocean below them. "Let's trash it and get out of here." They jetpacked toward the device. Up close, Ben could see it was more sophisticated than he'd first thought, and vaguely familiar. "Wait a second," he muttered, examining the angular design and pulsing green power core. "This looks like Galvan tech," Kevin finished. "But what's it doing here?" Before Ben could respond, a portion of the device rotated toward them, revealing a small holoprojector. It activated, displaying a familiar face that made Ben's stomach drop. "Vilgax." "Tennyson," the hologram growled. "I suspected you might investigate my little diversion." "Vilgax," Ben replied, his voice steady despite the chill that ran down his spine. "What's your game this time?" The squid-faced warlord sneered. "Merely testing Earth's new defenses, or lack thereof." "How does it feel to be powerless, Ben Tennyson? To watch as your precious planet becomes vulnerable to things you once could have easily defeated?" Ben refused to show any reaction. "If you think Earth is defenseless without me having the Omnitrix, you've made a serious miscalculation." Vilgax laughed. "Have I? From what I've observed, these dimensional breaches are stretching your resources thin. And this is just the beginning." The device began to pulse faster, its energy output visibly increasing. The breach behind them widened suddenly, causing their jetpacks to stutter in the energy wash. "Kevin, we need to shut this down now." Kevin didn't need to be told twice. He morphed his arm into a blade and swung at the device's power core. At the same moment, Ben fired a compressed energy blast from his plumber weapon. The device sparked violently, the hologram of Vilgax flickering. "Fools," Vilgax snarled as his image destabilized. "This was merely a test. The real attack comes." The hologram cut out as the device exploded, sending them tumbling backward. The breach began to contract rapidly. "Time to go," Ben shouted, grabbing Kevin's arm again and diving toward the closing tear. They barely made it through before the breach sealed behind them, crashing into the harbor water below. Gwen's mana platforms caught them before they hit the corrosive patches that had leaked through. "Ben!" Are you okay? Gwen helped them onto the pier. Yeah, Ben said, catching his breath. But we've got bigger problems. That breach was artificial. Vilgax created it. 4 arms crossed his multiple limbs. Vilgax. That's the second time he's shown up since we got separated from the Omnitrix. And I doubt it'll be the last, Ben said grimly. He's testing defenses, looking for weaknesses now that I can't transform. Diamond had finished creating a crystalline container around the last of the corrosive liquid. Well, he found us instead. Maybe that'll make him think twice. Ben wasn't so sure. The look in Vilgax's holographic eyes hadn't been one of concern, it had been satisfaction. Whatever game the warlord was playing, this had just been the opening move. We need to report this to Grandpa Max, Ben said. And Azimuth needs to know someone's using modified Galvan tech to create these breaches. As they headed back to Plumber HQ, Ben walked alongside Diamond Head and 4 arms, feeling a strange mix of comfort and awkwardness. It was good to have them here, but the dynamic was so different now. They weren't just forms he could take, they were people making their own choices. So, he ventured, how's plumber work going for you guys? Different, 4 arms replied. Used to fighting as you, not alongside you. Diamond Head nodded. It's strange having other plumbers give us orders instead of just being the one giving orders through us. But good strange, 4 arms added quickly. We're learning a lot. Magister Tennyson has been helping us understand our legal status, Diamond Head explained. Technically, we didn't exist as separate entities before, so there were questions about citizenship, rights, that kind of thing. Ben hadn't even thought about those complications. What did you find out? We're being classified as emergent sentient beings with full rights under plumber protection, Diamond Head said. Your grandfather's been a big help pushing that through. Ben felt a rush of gratitude toward Grandpa Max. Of course he would look out for the aliens' welfare. That's great. And, have you heard from any of the others? 4 arms grinned. XLR-8 sent a transmission yesterday. He's been to 3 planets already. Can't sit still, that one. Gray matter's still with Azimuth, Diamond Head added. Says they're making progress on the Omnitrix modifications, whatever that means. And Heat Blast? The 2 aliens exchanged looks that made Ben uneasy. What? He pressed. He's on Pyros, 4 arms said carefully. But he's connecting with his heritage pretty strongly. Not sure he's planning to come back. The news shouldn't have hurt as much as it did. Wasn't that the point of their freedom, to make their own choices? Still, the thought of Heat Blast choosing to stay permanently separated felt like losing a limb. That's good for him, Ben managed. If that's what he wants. The conversation faded into awkward silence as they reached Plumber HQ. Inside, the command center was buzzing with activity. Screens displayed reports of dimensional anomalies worldwide, some natural, others potentially artificial like the one they just encountered. Grandpa Max looked up from the central console as they entered. Ben. Thank goodness you're all right. We detected the breach collapse and weren't sure if you made it out. We're fine, Grandpa, Ben replied. But we've got bad news. Vilgax is behind at least some of these breaches. He's using them to test Earth's defenses. Max's expression darkened. I was afraid of something like this. With news spreading about your current situation, several of Earth's old enemies have been getting bold. Great, Ben muttered. Just what we needed. A familiar small voice joined the conversation. Actually, this development was statistically probable given the power vacuum created by the Omnitrix separation. Ben turned to see Gray Matter walking across the console, looking as scholarly as ever with tiny glasses perched on his bulbous head. Gray Matter. You're back too. The diminutive Galvan adjusted his glasses. Temporarily. Azimuth and I have made significant progress on the Omnitrix modifications and needed to run tests with the original consciousness matrices, meaning myself and the others. What kind of modifications? Ben asked, holding up his wrist where the powerless Omnitrix still sat. Complex ones, Gray Matter replied. The original Omnitrix was designed to store DNA samples and create transformations from them. What we're attempting is fundamentally different, a system that would allow autonomous beings to temporarily merge with the device while maintaining their independent existence. Ben tried to wrap his head around the concept. So you'd still be, you, but could also become part of the Omnitrix when needed? Precisely. Though the technical challenges are substantial. Grandpa Max cleared his throat. As fascinating as this is, we need to focus on the immediate threat. If Vilgax is creating artificial breaches, we need a way to detect and close them quickly. Gray Matter nodded. Actually, that relates to our research. The modified Omnitrix could potentially interface with the dimensional frequency of these breaches, allowing for more efficient closure. How long until it's ready? Ben asked. The Galvan's expression became evasive. That's complicated. The technical aspects are progressing well, but there are other considerations. What kind of considerations? Gray Matter exchanged glances with Diamond Head and Four Arms before answering. Not all of us are convinced that reconnecting with the Omnitrix is what we want. The ethical dimensions are complex. Ben felt a twinge of disappointment but nodded. I understand. It has to be your choice. In the meantime, Grandpa Max interjected, we need practical solutions. Gray Matter, can you help develop better detection systems for Vilgax's artificial breaches? Of course. Ben, I want you and Rook to check out reports of unusual tech purchases that might be related to breach technology. Diamondhead, for Arms, we've got situations in Europe and Asia that could use your specific abilities. Everyone moved to their assignments. As Ben headed toward the research section to meet Rook, he felt Gray Matter scurry alongside him. Ben, the tiny alien said quietly. There's something else you should know. About Nexus. Ben slowed his pace. What about him? Azimuth has been researching his species based on the energy signatures we recorded. The Contemplarians aren't just observers of consciousness, they're experimenters. Some of their past projects have had devastating consequences for the civilizations involved. A chill ran down Ben's spine. What kind of consequences? Complete societal collapse in some cases. Interspecies conflict in others. Gray Matter looked genuinely concerned. Nexus presented our separation as liberation, but Azimuth suspects his motives may be more complicated. You think this whole thing is just some cosmic experiment to him? With us as the lab rats? Gray Matter adjusted his glasses nervously. The evidence suggests he's studying how a power dynamic changes when former tools become autonomous agents, yes. Ben stopped walking entirely, processing this. Have you told the others? Not yet. I wanted to discuss it with you first. The implications are significant. Yeah, no kidding. Ben ran a hand through his hair, thinking. If Nexus is just using us for some experiment, maybe this separation isn't what we thought. Maybe it's not about freedom at all. Gray Matter nodded solemnly. That's the concerning part. And with Vilgax exploiting the situation, the timing couldn't be worse. We need to talk to everyone, Ben decided. Get all the aliens together again, figure this out as a team. That may be difficult. Heat Blast is fully embedded in Pyronite society now, and XLR-8 is halfway across the galaxy. Then we call them in. This affects all of us. Ben's expression hardened with determination. If Nexus is playing games with our lives while Vilgax plans an attack, we need to be united, not scattered across the universe. Gray Matter studied Ben's face. You've changed, you know. 3 weeks without the Omnitrix has altered you. Good changed or bad changed? Just, changed. More deliberate. More strategic. The Galvan smiled slightly. Perhaps being forced to think without immediately transforming has had some benefits. Ben hadn't considered that perspective, but Grey Matter had a point. Without the option to go hero at every challenge, he'd been forced to plan more carefully, think more thoroughly, consider consequences before acting. Maybe, he acknowledged. But I'd still like the option to transform when a 50-foot alien squid is trying to kill me. Understandable. I'll continue working with Azimuth on the modifications. As Grey Matter scurried off, Ben continued toward the research section, his mind racing with this new information about Nexus. If their cosmic liberator had ulterior motives, what did that mean for the aliens' newfound freedom? And with Vilgax planning something big, how would Earth defend itself against threats that once required Omnitrix powers to defeat? The questions swirled in his head as he joined Rook to begin investigating the tech purchases. For now, all he could do was adapt, to being just Ben, to working alongside his former transformations instead of as them, to facing enemies without his greatest weapon. One thing was certain, nothing about this situation was as simple as it had first appeared. Halfway across the galaxy, on the fiery world of Pyros, Heatblast stood atop a volcano overlooking a Pyronite settlement. The past 3 weeks had been revelatory. He possessed Ben's memories of briefly visiting this world, but experiencing it directly, feeling the comfortable embrace of the lava flows, communicating with other Pyronites in their native thermal language, was entirely different. "You seem troubled, outsider," said a voice behind him. Heatblast turned to see Infernus, an elder Pyronite who had taken particular interest in him since his arrival. The Pyronites had been initially suspicious of Heatblast, sensing something different about his flame pattern that marked him as not truly one of them. He wasn't born of Pyros, but created from DNA stored in the Omnitrix, given consciousness through Ben's interactions with that DNA. They had a name for beings like him, outsiders. Not quite aliens, not fully Pyronites. "Just thinking," Heatblast replied, turning back to the view. "Got a message from Earth. Trouble brewing there." Infernus moved beside him, his older, darker flames crackling with wisdom. "The human world concerns you still, though you have found your true home." Had he, though? That was the question haunting Heatblast. Pyros was fascinating, comfortable in ways Earth could never be for a being made of fire. Yet he felt disconnected from the Pyronite society in subtle ways, their cultural references, their historical knowledge, their innate understanding of flame dynamics. "Earth was where I came to be," Heatblast said carefully. "My consciousness formed there, through Ben Tennyson." Infernus made a dismissive flare with his hand. "The human who kept you imprisoned in his device." "It wasn't like that." Heatblast found himself defending Ben automatically. "We were partners. I just didn't have independent existence." "A partnership where only one party can decide when the other exists is no partnership at all," Infernus observed. The words stung because they contained truth. Yet they also missed something essential about his relationship with Ben. "They need help," Heatblast said, changing the subject. "Dimensional breaches threatening Earth. Vilgax planning something. And what is that to you now? You are on Pyros. You have begun the path of flame. Soon you will undergo the ritual of belonging." The ritual, a Pyronite ceremony that would permanently alter his flame composition to match that of native-born Pyronites. It would erase the subtle differences that marked him as an outsider, allowing him full acceptance into their society. It would also, though no one explicitly said this, sever the unique connection that might allow him to rejoin the Omnitrix someday. "I haven't decided about the ritual," Heatblast said carefully. Infernus's flames flickered with something like disappointment. "Your fire still burns divided, outsider. Part of you remains tethered to the human world. Is that so wrong? My consciousness formed there. I have memories, connections, memories given to you by the human, connections forged when you had no choice but to serve his will," Infernus interrupted. "The ritual offers true freedom, to be fully pyronite, not a human's tool. Heat Blast felt his core temperature rise with frustration. Ben never treated me as just a tool. Yet you existed only at his command. It was the same circular argument they'd had several times now. Heat Blast sighed, releasing a plume of smoke. I need to think. The ritual cannot wait forever, Infernus warned. The celestial alignment comes only once each cycle. If you wish to truly belong among us, you must decide soon. With that, the elder descended back toward the settlement, leaving Heat Blast alone with his thoughts. He pulled out the communication device Grey Matter had given each of them before they parted ways. Earth was calling, quite literally. But was it still his home? Was his place alongside Ben and the others, or here among beings who shared his physiology if not his experiences? After a long moment, Heat Blast made his decision. He activated the device. Grey Matter. It's Heat Blast. I got your message. I'm coming back to Earth. There's something I need to figure out first. XLR-8 couldn't stop moving. That was nothing new. Kinecellarians were naturally hyperactive, but since gaining independence from the Omnitrix, his perpetual motion had taken on new meaning. Freedom meant movement, endless glorious movement without constraints. He'd visited 3 planets in 3 weeks, zooming across alien landscapes, testing his speed in different gravitational conditions, experiencing everything directly rather than through the filter of Ben's consciousness. Currently, he was streaking across the crystalline plains of Petropia, leaving a blue blur behind him as he ran purely for the joy of it. Diamond Head's homeworld was fascinating, all reflective surfaces and geometric formations that created natural obstacle courses perfect for testing his agility. His communicator beeped for the 3rd time that hour. XLR-8 skidded to a halt, creating a spray of crystal shards, and finally answered. Yeah, I got your messages. All of them. I'm kind of in the middle of something here. Grey Matter's tiny face appeared on the screen, looking unusually serious. This isn't optional, XLR-8. We need everyone back on Earth. Both for the Omnitrix testing and because of the situation with Nexus and Vilgax. XLR-8 shifted his weight from foot to foot, already itching to run again. Look, I get it's important and all, but I'm finally experiencing things for myself. Do you know how amazing it feels to run across the galaxy without waiting for Ben to dial me up? I understand, Grey Matter said patiently. But there are bigger issues at stake. Nexus may have manipulated us for his own purposes, and Vilgax is exploiting the situation to threaten Earth. So, Earth has plenty of defenders. That's Ben's thing, not mine. There was a pause before Grey Matter spoke again. Is that really how you feel? That defending Earth was just Ben's programming imposing on you? XLR-8 felt a flash of irritation. I didn't say that. But it's what? You implied. That your heroic actions were Ben's choice, not yours. I didn't. XLR-8 stopped, suddenly unsure. It was a question that had been nagging at him throughout his galactic tour. How much of his personality, his values, his desires were truly his own? How much came from Ben or from the original Kinecellaran DNA in the Omnitrix? Look, Grey Matter continued gently, I've been studying our situation extensively. Our consciousnesses are unique, neither fully Ben's creation nor simply copies of the original DNA donors. We're something new, shaped by both but distinct from either. What's your point? My point is that your desire to run free across the galaxy and Ben's sense of responsibility aren't mutually exclusive. Both can be authentic parts of who you are. XLR-8 scuffed his foot against the crystal ground, sending up sparks. Fine. So what? Earth still has plenty of heroes. But none with your specific abilities, Grey Matter countered. And with the dimensional breaches multiplying, speed could be crucial. Besides, don't you want to know what Nexus really wants from us? Why he separated us from the Omnitrix? That hit home. XLR-8 had been wondering the same thing during quiet moments between runs. The cosmic being's sudden appearance and convenient liberation had seemed too good to be true from the start. When's this meeting happening? 2 days from now at Plumber HQ, Heat Blast is coming too. That surprised XLR-8. Really? Thought he'd gone native on pyros. Apparently he has unresolved questions as well. XLR-8 considered for a moment, which, for a Kinoceleran, was actually quite a long deliberation. Fine, he finally said. I'll be there. But I'm not promising anything about rejoining the Omnitrix or whatever. I like being me full-time. Grey Matter nodded. No one's forcing any decisions. This is about getting information and considering our options, together. After ending the call, XLR-8 gazed across the crystal plane stretching to the horizon. He could cover that distance in minutes. Could go anywhere, see anything, all at his own choice and pace. Freedom felt amazing. But Grey Matter's words lingered in his mind. If his heroic instincts were authentic, not just programming or Ben's influence, then ignoring threats to Earth would mean denying part of himself. With a resigned sigh that turned into an excited whoop, XLR-8 took off toward the nearest teleport station. Maybe a quick trip back to Earth wouldn't be so bad. He could always leave again afterward. After all, that was the whole point of freedom, making choices, even tough ones. Back on Earth, Ben found himself in an unexpected location, a high school gymnasium after hours, dressed in workout clothes and facing a training dummy. Again, Gwen instructed from where she stood nearby. And this time, channel your energy properly. Ben wiped sweat from his forehead. I'm trying. This magic stuff is harder than it looks. It's not magic, Gwen corrected for what felt like the 100th time. It's focused life energy. Everyone has it, most people just never learn to access it. Yeah, well, most people can't turn into aliens either, but that was a lot easier than this. Nevertheless, Ben resumed his stance and concentrated, trying to feel the energy Gwen insisted flowed through all living things. After several moments of intense focus, a faint blue glow appeared around his hands. That's it. Gwen encouraged. Now direct it toward the dummy, like we practiced. Ben thrust his palms forward, sending a wobbly bolt of energy shooting from his hands. It missed the dummy entirely, instead hitting a stack of gym mats and causing them to slide across the floor. Well, Gwen said diplomatically, your energy projection is getting stronger. Your aim still needs work. Ben flopped onto a bench, exhausted. This is hopeless. I'm not cut out for mana manipulation or whatever you call it. You're being too hard on yourself. It took me years to master these skills. We don't have years, Gwen. Vilgax is out there right now, planning who knows what. The dimensional breaches are getting worse. And I'm stuck here trying to learn magic tricks. Gwen sat beside him. Energy manipulation isn't a quick fix, Ben. But it's a tool you might need, especially now. And you are making progress. Ben knew she was right, but it was frustrating. 3 weeks ago, he could have transformed into any of a dozen aliens to handle a threat. Now he was struggling to produce energy blasts that wouldn't even stun a Volpomancer. There has to be a faster way to get back in the game, he muttered. Maybe there is. They both looked up to find Kevin leaning against the doorway, a suspicious grin on his face. What did you do? Gwen asked immediately, recognizing her boyfriend's "I did something questionable" expression. Kevin held up his hands defensively. Nothing illegal. Well, not very illegal. I just called in some favors from my less reputable contacts. Kevin. Gwen's tone held warning. Relax. I got Ben something to help even the playing field until the Omnitrix is working again. He tossed a small metal case to Ben. Consider it a "sorry you lost your superpowers" present. Ben opened the case cautiously. Inside was what looked like a high-tech gauntlet with various attachments and a power core that glowed with familiar green energy. Is this Galvanic mechamorph tech, modified for human use, Kevin confirmed proudly. Not as versatile as the Omnitrix, but it should give you some options in a fight. Force fields, energy blasts, limited tech control. I called in major favors for this, so try not to break it immediately. Ben stared at the device in amazement. Kevin, this is, wow. Thank you. Yeah, well, watching you train with Gwen was getting painful. Figured you needed a shortcut. Gwen crossed her arms. Where exactly did you get galvanic mechamorph technology, Kevin? Let's just say Ship isn't the only friendly mechamorph in the galaxy and leave it at that, okay? Ben strapped the gauntlet to his arm opposite the powerless Omnitrix. It hummed to life, interface lights glowing as it adjusted to his physiology. This feels incredible, he said, feeling the device's energy interfacing with his nervous system. How do I? Before he could finish the question, a green energy shield erupted from the gauntlet, expanding to cover his entire front. Mental commands, Kevin explained. The neural interface reads your intentions. Just think about what you want it to do, shield, blast, tech interface. It's not as intuitive as the Omnitrix, but you'll get the hang of it. Ben concentrated, and the shield morphed into a focused energy beam that he directed at the training dummy. Unlike his mana attempts, this blast hit dead center, leaving a smoking hole. Now that's more like it, he grinned. Gwen gave Kevin a mix of admiration and exasperation. I'm not sure whether to kiss you or lecture you about illegal tech trafficking. I vote for the first option. Ben was already experimenting with different functions, his confidence visibly returning as the gauntlet responded to his commands. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he might actually be able to face threats head-on instead of from the sidelines. This doesn't mean you can stop training with me, Gwen warned. Technology can fail. Your own abilities are always more reliable. I know, Ben agreed, though his attention remained fixed on the gauntlet as he tested its capabilities. But this gives me options now, while I'm still learning the other stuff. His plumber badge interrupted the impromptu training session, Grandpa Max's voice coming through with urgency. Ben, we've got a situation downtown. Multiple breaches opening simultaneously. We need all hands on deck. On my way, Grandpa. Ben looked down at his new gauntlet with determination. Time to test this thing for real. Downtown Bellwood had become an interdimensional war zone. 5 separate breaches had opened within a 6-block radius, each spilling different phenomena into reality. One released floating globes of water containing alien fish, another spewed superheated plasma, a third had turned the street into a patchwork of different surfaces ranging from metal to something organic and pulsating. Plumber teams were already on site, containing what they could while evacuating civilians. Ben spotted Rook coordinating efforts near the largest breach, which appeared to be intermittently releasing bursts of anti-gravity. Rook. Ben called as they approached. Status report. Not good, his partner replied grimly. These breaches match the energy signature from Vilgax's device. They appear to be strategically placed to maximize chaos while minimizing our ability to contain them all simultaneously. Divide and conquer, Ben murmured, taking in the scene. Classic Vilgax. A car floated past them, caught in an anti-gravity wave, then crashed back to Earth as the effect dissipated. Nearby, plumber agents were trying to contain the alien fish globes, which turned out to be acidic when they burst. We need to prioritize, Ben decided. The plasma breach is the most immediately dangerous. Kevin, Gwen, can you contain it? Kevin absorbed concrete from the sidewalk. On it. Rook, coordinate the evacuation and containment of the fish globes. I'll handle the anti-gravity breach with. He raised his gauntlet arm, whatever this thing can do. Ben dude, are you certain? Rook looked skeptical. That appears to be untested technology. No time like the present to find out what it can do. Ben approached the anti-gravity breach cautiously. Objects caught in its influence would float upward before crashing down when they drifted beyond the effect's range. The pattern seemed semi-predictable, pulses of anti-grav followed by normal gravity. He concentrated on his gauntlet, mentally cycling through its functions until he found what felt like an energy manipulation setting. When the next anti-grav pulse emerged, he directed the gauntlet toward it, attempting to create a counter-gravitational field. To his surprise, it worked. The gauntlet projected a beam that intercepted the anti-grav effect, creating a neutralized zone where objects remained at normal weight. Yes! Ben pumped his fist in triumph. Kevin, this thing is amazing. His celebration was short-lived as the breach suddenly expanded, doubling in size and increasing the intensity of its pulses. Ben's counterfield struggled to compensate, the gauntlet heating up on his arm. Okay, not good, he muttered, backing up. Need a new approach. The breach's rhythmic pulses gave him an idea. If he couldn't contain it directly, maybe he could disrupt its frequency. He adjusted the gauntlet's output, timing his energy blasts to counter rhythm with the anti-grav pulses. After several attempts, he found the right pattern. Each precisely timed blast seemed to momentarily destabilize the breach, causing it to flicker and contract slightly. Rook, he shouted. These breaches have a resonance frequency. If we hit them with counterpulses at the right timing, we can force them closed. Rook quickly relayed the information to the other teams. Soon, all the plumbers were adjusting their tactics, using energy weapons to create disruptive patterns against each breach. Gradually, the strategy worked. One by one, the dimensional tiers began to contract and seal. Ben maintained his counterpulse against the anti-gravity breach, sweat beading on his forehead as the gauntlet grew uncomfortably hot against his skin. Just a little more, he muttered through gritted teeth. With a final surge of effort, he increased the gauntlet's output to maximum. The breach contracted violently, then collapsed with a thunderclap that shattered nearby windows. The sudden silence was almost disorienting after the chaos. Ben staggered back, the gauntlet powering down to prevent overheating. Around them, the other breaches had also been sealed, leaving Bellwood's downtown damaged but breach-free. Everyone okay? He called out, looking for his team. Gwen and Kevin emerged from a side street, singed but unharmed. Rook joined them moments later. No casualties reported, Rook confirmed. Though property damage is extensive. Ben nodded, relief washing over him. That was too coordinated to be natural. Vilgax is definitely behind this. But why? Gwen wondered. What does he gain from random chaos? Testing responses, Ben suggested. Seeing how we handle multiple breaches at once, what resources we commit, how quickly we adapt. Like a general probing defenses before the main attack, Kevin added grimly. The thought settled heavily over the group. If these breaches were just tests, what would the actual attack look like? Their contemplation was interrupted by a familiar whooshing sound. A blue streak circled them several times before stopping to reveal XLR-8, looking as energetic as ever. Whoa, the speedster said, taking in the destruction. Looks like I missed the party. XLR-8. Ben couldn't hide his surprise and pleasure. You're back. Temporarily, XLR-8 clarified, though his tone lacked conviction. Gray Matter called everyone in for some big meeting. Something about Nexus and his true motives? Yeah, Ben nodded. We've learned some concerning things about our cosmic friend and his species. They're apparently known for running experiments on civilizations, experiments that don't always end well for the test subjects. XLR-8 frowned. So what, this whole separation thing was just some cosmic science project? We don't know for sure, Gwen interjected. But it seems likely Nexus has motives beyond just liberating you all from the Omnitrix. Great, XLR-8 muttered. Just when I was enjoying my freedom tour. Any other bad news? Vilgax is creating artificial dimensional breaches and likely planning a major attack on Earth, Ben supplied. So yeah, pretty much business as usual for us. XLR-8 sighed dramatically. Never a dull moment with you, Tennyson. Despite his complaints, Ben could see the speedster was already mentally engaging with the problem, his feet tapping with characteristic impatience. So what's the plan? First, we get everyone together, all the separated aliens. Gray Matter scheduled a meeting for tomorrow at Plumber HQ. Ben gestured at the cleanup efforts beginning around them. Then we figure out how to handle both Nexus and Vilgax before either one of them causes permanent damage. XLR-8 nodded. Anyone heard from Heat Blast? Last I checked, he was going full native on pyros. He's coming too, Ben confirmed, trying to keep his tone neutral despite his lingering concerns about Heat Blast's potential permanent separation. Should be here by tomorrow. As they helped with the cleanup efforts, Ben found himself working alongside XLR-8, the speedster using his incredible velocity to clear debris faster than any machine could. It felt strange but good to work with his former transformation this way, as partners rather than as a single entity. So, Ben ventured during a brief pause in XLR-8's constant motion, "How's freedom treating you?" XLR-8 grinned. "Pretty awesome, not gonna lie. Ran across 3 planets in 3 weeks. Turns out the universe is even cooler at super speed." "Sounds amazing," Ben said, genuinely happy for him despite the twinge of envy. "Must be nice to go where you want, when you want." "Yeah." XLR-8 hesitated, then added, "Though it's weird sometimes. Having all these adventures that are just mine, not ours. Keep having thoughts like, Ben would find this hilarious or, Ben would know what to do here. Hard to shake the connection, you know." The admission surprised Ben. "I didn't realize you thought about it that way." "Don't get mushy about it," XLR-8 warned, though his tone remained light. "I'm enjoying the independence. Just saying it's an adjustment. For all of us," Ben agreed. He hesitated, then asked the question that had been weighing on him. "Have you thought about what you'll do long term? About the Omnitrix modifications Gray Matter mentioned?" XLR-8 was quiet for a moment, unusual for the hyperactive alien. "Honestly? I don't know. Being able to run across the galaxy whenever I want is incredible. But what? But I miss the team sometimes. The purpose." XLR-8 gestured at the cleanup efforts around them. "This stuff matters, you know. More than just running for the sake of running, as fun as that is." Ben nodded, understanding completely. "Whatever you decide, I support it." "Yeah, well, let's get through this Nexus and Vilgax situation first. One existential crisis at a time." With that, XLR-8 zoomed off to continue clearing debris, leaving Ben with a renewed sense of hope. Maybe their connection hadn't been as one-sided as he'd feared. Maybe, whatever paths they chose, they would still remain connected in ways that mattered. The gathering at Plumber HQ the next day felt momentous. For the first time since the separation, all of Ben's former transformations were together in one place: Heat Blast, Diamond Head, 4 Arms, XLR-8, and Gray Matter, along with Ben, Gwen, Kevin, Rook, Grandpa Max, and Azimuth, who participated via hologram from his lab on Galvan Prime. The atmosphere was tense but not unfriendly, like a family reunion where everyone had complicated history but still fundamentally cared about each other. "Thank you all for coming," Ben began, looking around at the assembled group. "Especially those who traveled from off-world." Heat Blast nodded acknowledgement. The Pyronite looked subtly different than when he'd left Earth 3 weeks ago, his flame pattern more structured, his posture more formal. The influence of pyros was evident in his bearing. "Let's get to the point," Gray Matter suggested from his position on the conference table. "We face 2 significant threats: Vilgax's escalating attacks through artificial dimensional breaches, and the potentially questionable motives of Nexus regarding our separation." Azimuth's hologram flickered as he leaned forward. "I've completed my research on the Contemplarians, Nexus's species. The findings are concerning." "What kind of concerning?" 4 Arms asked, crossing his multiple arms. The Contemplarians consider themselves students of consciousness across the multiverse. They've conducted what they term liberation experiments on various civilizations throughout history. Liberation experiments? Diamondhead repeated. Like what they did with us. Azimuth nodded grimly. Similar in concept, though different in execution. Previous cases involved separating integrated systems, hive minds, symbiotic species, unified governance structures. The Omnitrix transformation matrices represent a unique case, but the pattern is consistent. And what happened in these other experiments? Ben pressed, though he suspected he already knew the answer. In most cases, initial liberation led to celebration, followed by discord, conflict, and eventually either reunification or mutual destruction. The Contemplarians observed but never intervened, regardless of outcome. The aliens exchanged troubled glances. So we're just lab rats to Nexus, Heatblast said, flames intensifying with anger. Our freedom is just an experiment to see what happens. Not necessarily, Gwen interjected. Nexus may genuinely believe in liberation while still studying the results. The two aren't mutually exclusive. The concerning part, Azimuth continued, is that these experiments create dimensional instabilities as a side effect, precisely what we're experiencing. The Contemplarians study these too, considering them natural consequences of consciousness redistribution. And Vilgax is exploiting these instabilities, Ben added. Creating artificial breaches, testing our defenses, preparing for something bigger. The question, Grandpa Max said, is what we do about it. Both the immediate threat from Vilgax and the longer-term questions about your separation. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. It was XLR-8 who finally broke it. So what are our options? Go back to the way things were. Stay separated and deal with the dimensional fallout. What? Gray Matter adjusted his glasses. There are several possibilities. Azimuth and I have been working on Omnitrix modifications that would allow for a new kind of relationship, not full reintegration, but a symbiotic connection where you could maintain independent existence while still temporarily merging with the device when needed. That sounds complicated, Four-Arms noted. It is, Azimuth confirmed. But theoretically viable. You would exist as autonomous beings most of the time, but could voluntarily connect with the Omnitrix for specific missions or threats. Like a part-time job instead of being locked in a closet, Diamondhead summarized. Azimuth frowned at the characterization but didn't dispute it. Essentially, yes. What about these dimensional instabilities? Heatblast asked. Would reconnecting with the Omnitrix solve them? Partially, Gray Matter replied. A restored equilibrium would help stabilize the natural breaches, though Vilgax's artificial ones would remain an issue. Ben had been listening carefully, but now he spoke up. There's something we're not addressing directly. This has to be everyone's free choice. I won't pressure anyone to reconnect with the Omnitrix if that's not what they want. The aliens looked at him with varying expressions, surprise, appreciation, uncertainty. Even if it means Earth remains vulnerable. Grandpa Max asked gently. Even then, Ben confirmed. We'll find other ways to defend the planet. I've been training with Gwen, using this new gauntlet Kevin got me. We adapt. That's what we do. His former transformation seemed moved by this declaration. It was Heatblast who responded first. I spent 3 weeks on Pyros, he began, flames dancing thoughtfully. Met other Pyronites, learned their ways. They were going to perform a ritual of belonging that would make me fully one of them. And? Ben prompted when Heatblast paused. And I couldn't go through with it. The Pyronites' flames flickered with emotion. Because while Pyros felt right physically, it never felt like home. The Pyronites saw me as an outsider, not fully one of them. And they were right. What are you saying? Ben asked carefully. I'm saying that my consciousness was formed through you, Ben. Through our experiences together. I'm neither fully Pyronite nor human, but something unique. And I'm starting to think that's okay. XLR-8 nodded vigorously. Same here. Visited Kinet, ran with other Kinecellarans. It was awesome, but weird. Like I knew all the right moves but none of the inside jokes. We exist in a liminal space, gray matter observed. Neither fully the species whose DNA formed us, nor simply aspects of Ben's personality. We are something new, products of the interaction between Ben's consciousness and alien DNA. Which brings us back to the question, Diamondhead said. What do we do now? About Nexus, about Vilgax, about our existence. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the base. The main screen activated automatically, showing multiple red alert indicators across Bellwood and beyond. Dimensional breaches, Rook reported, checking the readings. Dozens of them, appearing simultaneously worldwide. Much larger than previous incidents. It's starting, Ben realized. Vilgax's real attack. The screen shifted to show news footage of chaos erupting globally. In New York, buildings floated weightlessly before crashing down. In Tokyo, time distortions aged people randomly forward and backward. In Cairo, the streets had transformed into alien vegetation that consumed everything it touched. This is beyond containment, Grandpa Max said gravely. We need a solution that addresses the root cause. All eyes turned to Azimuth. There is a theoretical approach, the Galvan said reluctantly. The modified Omnitrix could potentially create a counter-resonance to close all the breaches simultaneously, but only if powered by the original transformation matrices. Meaning us, gray matter translated for the others. We would need to temporarily merge with the device to generate sufficient energy. Would it be permanent? Heat Blast asked. No, Azimuth assured them. The connection would be voluntary and reversible. But it would require all of you to participate for maximum effectiveness. The aliens looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them. Then they turned to Ben. It's your call, Ben said, holding up his wrist with the powerless Omnitrix. I meant what I said. This has to be your choice. Another alarm sounded, even more urgent than before. The screen showed a familiar ship entering Earth's atmosphere, Vilgax's massive warship, accompanied by a fleet of smaller vessels. He's making his move while Earth's defenses are scattered dealing with the breaches, Kevin observed. We're out of time for debate, Grandpa Max said. What's it going to be? Heat Blast stepped forward first. I'm in. Whatever issues I have with being part of the Omnitrix again, I won't stand by while Earth is attacked. Me too, XLR-8 decided. Been everywhere worth running to anyway. Calculating the probability of Earth's survival without our intervention, not good, Gray Matter said. I'm in as well. Diamondhead and Four Arms exchanged glances, then nodded their agreement. Unanimous, then, Diamondhead concluded. We do this together. Ben felt a complex mix of emotions, relief, gratitude, and responsibility. These weren't just his powers choosing to return, they were independent beings choosing to partner with him. What do we need to do? He asked Azimuth. I'll transmit the modification protocols to the Omnitrix remotely, the Galvan replied. Prepare for connection in 30 seconds. As Azimuth worked, Ben turned to his former transformations. Thank you. All of you. I promise, this will be different than before. A partnership, not ownership. We know, Ben, Diamondhead said simply. That's why we're choosing this. The Omnitrix on Ben's wrist suddenly glowed, coming to life for the first time in 3 weeks. Its faceplate displayed new, more complex patterns than before. Modifications complete, Azimuth announced. The symbiotic connection protocol is active. The aliens gathered around Ben, each placing a hand near the device. The Omnitrix responded with pulses of green light that reached out toward them. This feels weird, Four Arms commented as the energy began to envelop him. Fascinating, Gray Matter observed as the process began. Our consciousness matrices are interfacing with the device while maintaining distinct identities. One by one, the aliens transformed into energy that flowed into the Omnitrix, not absorbed or consumed, but connected in a new, more complex relationship. Ben felt the device warm on his wrist, power flowing through it again, but different than before, more alive somehow, more responsive. When the process completed, the Omnitrix glowed with renewed energy, its interface redesigned with 5 distinct sections around the central dial, each representing one of the aliens. Connection successful, Azimuth confirmed. The modified Omnitrix is online. Each transformation matrix remains conscious and distinct within the device, able to communicate with you directly if they choose. Ben stared at the watch in wonder. I can feel them. Not like before, they're more present somehow. The symbiotic protocol allows two-way communication and voluntary transformation, Azimuth explained. They can suggest transformations based on circumstances, and you can request specific forms. Either party can initiate or decline. No time to admire the upgrades, Grandpa Max interrupted, gesturing at the screens showing escalating chaos. We need to deploy that counter-resonance now. Ben nodded, focusing on the mission. How do I activate it? Transform into all 5 aliens sequentially within a short timeframe, Azimuth instructed. The combined energy signature will create the counter-resonance field. 5 transformations back to back. Ben frowned. The Omnitrix usually needs to recharge between forms. The symbiotic protocol eliminates that limitation, Azimuth explained. The transformations are now cooperative rather than forced, requiring less energy to maintain. Ben took a deep breath and activated the Omnitrix. The familiar green holographic interface appeared, but with a new feature. Each alien silhouette seemed to pulse with its own rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Here goes nothing, he muttered, selecting Heatblast's icon. As he transformed, Ben experienced something entirely new. Rather than simply becoming Heatblast, he felt like he was joining with him, a merger of consciousnesses rather than a replacement. He could sense Heatblast's thoughts, his experiences on pyros, his perspective on fire and heat. Whoa, Ben/Heatblast said aloud. This is incredible. No time to marvel at the new sensation. He immediately activated the Omnitrix again, switching to XLR8. Again, the transformation felt like a joining rather than a becoming. One by one, Ben cycled through all 5 aliens, Heatblast, XLR8, 4 Arms, Diamond Head, and finally Gray Matter. With each transformation, energy built within the Omnitrix, creating a resonance field that expanded outward. As Gray Matter, Ben felt the accumulated energy reach critical mass. Now, Gray Matter exclaimed, activating the final sequence. The Omnitrix released a massive pulse of green energy that expanded outward in all directions, passing through walls and people harmlessly but interacting with the dimensional breaches. Wherever the energy wave encountered a breach, it forced the tear to contract and seal. Ben transformed back to human form, staggering slightly from the effort. On the screens around them, they watched as breaches worldwide began to close. Within minutes, the dimensional disruptions had sealed completely. It worked! Gwen exclaimed. One problem down, Kevin noted, pointing to the screen showing Vilgax's approaching fleet. One squid-faced warlord to go. Ben looked down at the Omnitrix, feeling the presence of his partners within it. Any preferences on who gets first crack at Vilgax? He felt rather than heard the responses, a chorus of eager volunteers, each with their own reasons for wanting to face their longtime enemy. Ben smiled. That's what I thought. He turned to his human team. Let's go welcome Vilgax to Earth. Again. As they headed for the hangar bay and the waiting plumber ships, Ben marveled at how different this felt from his years of wielding the Omnitrix. The aliens weren't just powers anymore, they were teammates, partners, friends choosing to work with him. The separation had changed everything, forcing both Ben and his transformations to confront questions of identity, autonomy, and purpose. Now, their reconnection represented something new, a partnership of equals facing challenges together. Nexus had called it an experiment in consciousness liberation. Vilgax had seen it as an opportunity to exploit weakness. Neither had anticipated this outcome, strength found not in separation or control, but in voluntary cooperation. Ben activated the Omnitrix as they boarded the ship, cycling through the alien forms not to choose one, but to acknowledge them all. Whatever came next, they would face it together, not as wielder and tool, but as a team united by choice rather than circumstance. Hero time, Ben said, feeling the willing agreement of his partners resonating through the device. For all of us. Vilgax's fleet loomed in the sky above Bellwood, weapons charging. But for the first time in 3 weeks, Ben felt truly ready to face whatever came next. Not because he had the most powerful device in the universe strapped to his wrist, but because that device now contained allies who had chosen to stand with him, consciousness and free will intact. The real experiment was just beginning. Chapter 3, Reconciliation. Vilgax's warship hovered over Bellwood like a massive metal thundercloud. Smaller vessels swarmed around it, already beginning their descent toward the city. The distinctive scream of energy weapons pierced the air as the first volley struck, not at buildings or infrastructure, but at the now sealed dimensional breaches. He's trying to reopen them, Ben realized as the plumber ship approached the battlefield. Vilgax wants the dimensional chaos back. Rook piloted their vessel with expert precision, weaving between enemy fire. Why would he want the breaches reopened? They affect his forces as well as ours. Because chaos favors the prepared, Grandpa Max explained from the tactical station. And you can bet Vilgax came prepared. Ben stood at the viewport, watching Bellwood's emergency services evacuating civilians from the projected combat zone. 3 weeks ago, he would have immediately transformed to handle the threat. Now, with the symbiotic Omnitrix, he took a moment to consult with his partners first. Any thoughts on our approach? He asked, not out loud but directed toward the presence he could feel within the device. The response came as impressions rather than words, Diamondhead suggesting a direct assault on the flagship, XLR-8 favoring a rapid strike against the smaller vessels, Gray Matter calculating weak points in Vilgax's formation. We need to draw them away from the city first, Ben decided. Too many civilians still in the evacuation zone. Gwen joined him at the viewport. I can create a mana decoy, something big and flashy to get their attention. Do it, Ben nodded. Kevin, you and Rook target the ships trying to reopen the breaches. Grandpa, coordinate with Plumber HQ for backup. I'll handle Vilgax directly. The plan set, they burst into action. Gwen created an enormous mana construct, a glowing purple falcon that soared over the battlefield, drawing enemy fire. Meanwhile, Rook deployed the ship's weapons against the smaller vessels, with Kevin manning the secondary turrets. Ben moved to the ship's airlock. Time to introduce Vilgax to the new and improved Omnitrix. He activated the device, cycling through his available transformations. Each alien's presence felt distinct now, not just a form to use but a partner to work with. He settled on Heat Blast, feeling the Pyronites' eager agreement with the choice. The transformation felt different from before, like a merging rather than a replacement. Ben's consciousness remained distinct even as Heat Blast's perspective and abilities became available to him. This is still so weird, Ben/Heat Blast murmured, examining his flaming hands. Good weird, though. He felt Heat Blast's amused agreement in his mind. The airlock opened, and Ben launched himself toward Vilgax's flagship, propelling through the air on jets of flame. Enemy ships noticed immediately, redirecting their fire toward the incoming Pyronite. Just like old times. Ben called out, dodging energy blasts with practiced ease. He lobbed fireballs at the pursuing vessels, not aiming to destroy them but to damage their weapons and navigation systems. As he approached the flagship, he noticed something odd about its hull. Sections appeared to be made of different materials, almost patchwork in nature. Is that? Heat Blast's knowledge merged with Ben's observation. Tech from different dimensions. He's been collecting technology through the breaches. Ben felt gray matter's urgent desire to analyze this development. With a mental nod of agreement, he touched the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, shifting from heat blast to gray matter mid-flight. The sudden transformation from a fire being to a tiny galvan would have been disastrous without quick thinking. Ben/Gray Matter immediately activated the tiny jetpack built into Gray Matter's utility belt, a modification Ben had never used before but that Gray Matter knew intimately. Fascinating adaptation, Ben/Gray Matter said, hovering close to the ship's hull. Vilgax has incorporated technology from at least 7 different dimensions, creating a hybrid vessel with capabilities beyond anything in our universe. He felt Gray Matter's scientific curiosity battling with his strategic concern. No time for detailed analysis now. But look, Ben directed their shared attention to a particular section of the hull. That's Quantumelia technology. How did Vilgax get that? Before they could consider the implications, defense turrets on the hull swiveled toward them, forcing Ben/Gray Matter to dart away. A larger ship approached, its bay doors opening to reveal dozens of combat drones launching into the air. Time for someone with more firepower, Ben decided, touching the Omnitrix symbol again. This time, the surge of transformation energy changed him into Diamondhead. Ben/Diamondhead landed on a smaller attack vessel, crystal hands gripping the hull as he surveyed the battlefield. Plumber ships were engaging the enemy fleet while Gwen's mana constructs protected civilian evacuation routes. Below, Kevin and Rook had joined ground forces defending the sealed breach points. Vilgax is diverting significant resources to those breach points, Ben observed, feeling Diamondhead's tactical assessment aligning with his own. That's his primary objective. With a swift motion, Ben/Diamondhead transformed the crystalline structure of his right arm into a blade, slicing through the ship's weapon systems before leaping to another vessel. We need to get aboard the flagship, he decided. End this at the source. Diamondhead's consciousness suggested a direct approach. Ben agreed, reshaping both arms into massive crystal hammers and bringing them down on the vessel beneath him. The impact created a breach in the hull, allowing him to drop inside. He found himself in a corridor filled with cybernetic drones, similar to the ones Vilgax had used for years, but modified with the same patchwork technology as the ship itself. Let's see how they handle multiple attackers. Ben touched the Omnitrix symbol, transforming into 4 arms. The Tetraman's strength and extra limbs made short work of the confined corridor, tearing through drones with efficient, powerful movements. Ben felt 4 arms battle satisfaction as they progressed deeper into the ship, heading toward the command center. Ben. Gwen's voice came through the Omnitrix communicator. Vilgax's forces are concentrating on the breach point near the old power plant. They've brought in some kind of device, looks similar to what you found in the other dimension. He's trying to re-establish the original breach, Ben/4 arms realized. The one that caused our separation in the first place. A mental impression from Gray Matter, a theory forming about Vilgax's true plan. You think he wants to reverse the process? Ben asked, addressing the Galvan's presence directly. Force you all back into the Omnitrix against your will. Another impression, not just reversal but exploitation. Control. That's it, Ben/4 arms said grimly, punching through a sealed door into what appeared to be a laboratory. He doesn't just want to undo your freedom. He wants to control the process, make you serve him instead. Inside the lab, Ben found confirmation of Gray Matter's theory, diagrams of the Omnitrix displayed on screens, alongside readouts of the original separation event. Vilgax had been studying it, looking for a way to manipulate the process. We need to get to that power plant, Ben decided, smashing the lab equipment. Vilgax isn't on this ship, he's overseeing the operation personally. A sudden explosion rocked the vessel. Through viewports, Ben saw plumber ships focusing their fire on the flagship's engines. Nice timing, Grandpa, Ben murmured with 4 arms deep voice. He touched the Omnitrix symbol, transforming into XLR-8. Time to race a squid. Ben/XLR-8 blasted through the ship at incredible speed, feeling the Kineceleran's joy in the velocity. They reached an external hull breach and leaped out, using XLR-8's momentum to race down the side of the massive vessel, across the sky via smaller ships, and finally down to the streets below. The world blurred around them as XLR-8 pushed to maximum velocity, racing toward the power plant on the edge of town. Ben felt XLR-8's thoughts merging with his own: strategic pathways, momentum calculations, pure exhilaration of speed. They arrived at the power plant in seconds, skidding to a halt behind a pile of rubble for cover. The scene before them confirmed their fears. Vilgax stood beside a massive device aimed at the exact spot where the original breach had occurred. Drone soldiers held back plumber forces while technicians made final adjustments to the machine. "This ends now, Vilgax," Ben/XLR-8 called out, stepping into view. The squid-faced warlord turned, eyes narrowing at the sight of the transformed hero. "Tennyson. I wondered when you'd arrive." His gaze fixed on the Omnitrix symbol. "I see you've convinced your liberated transformations to rejoin you." "How predictable." "They didn't rejoin me," Ben corrected, touching the Omnitrix symbol to transform back to human form. He wanted to face Vilgax directly for this. "We formed a partnership. Voluntary cooperation, not control." Vilgax laughed, the sound harsh and grating. Noble sentiments from someone who used them as tools for years. "Did you persuade them with pretty words about freedom while the universe burned around them?" "I didn't need to persuade them," Ben replied calmly. "They made their own choice." "That's something you'll never understand, Vilgax. Not everything is about control. Control is power." Vilgax roared. "And I will demonstrate true power today." He gestured to the device beside him. "This machine doesn't just reopen dimensional breaches, it allows me to direct the energy flow. When activated, it will reverse the separation process, but instead of returning your aliens to the Omnitrix, they will be transferred to this." He held up a gauntlet on his arm that bore disturbing similarities to the Omnitrix. "A counterfeit Omnitrix?" Ben raised an eyebrow. "Kinda been done before." "Not a counterfeit," Vilgax corrected. "A superior version, designed to harness the consciousness matrices without granting them autonomy. Pure power without compromise." Ben felt alarm ripple through the Omnitrix, his partners recognizing the threat. Not just to themselves, but to the dimensional stability they'd only recently restored. "You're insane," Ben said. "That device won't just transfer the transformations. It'll tear reality apart." "A small price to pay for ultimate power," Vilgax replied dismissively. "Portions of this universe may collapse, but I will simply rule what remains, before expanding to other dimensions using the breach technology I've acquired." "Not gonna happen," Ben activated the Omnitrix, feeling his partner's united determination. This time, he didn't simply select a transformation, he invited them all to contribute. The Omnitrix glowed with unprecedented energy as Ben transformed, not into a single alien, but into a composite form that contained elements of all five. The crystalline structure of Diamond Head formed his core, with 4 arms, musculature and additional limbs. Heat blast's flames coursed over portions of his body, while XLR-8 speed adaptations modified his legs. Gray matter's intelligence enhanced his brain function, evidenced by enlarged cranial capacity. "What is this?" Vilgax stepped back, genuinely surprised. "Partnership," Ben replied, his voice a harmonic blend of all 5 aliens plus his own. "True partnership." He launched forward with XLR-8 speed, for arm strength behind a punch that sent Vilgax flying into his own device. Before the warlord could recover, Ben unleashed a barrage of fiery crystal shards that peppered the machine, causing it to spark dangerously. "Destroy the device." Ben called to the plumber forces while continuing his assault on Vilgax. The warlord recovered quickly, his cybernetically enhanced body absorbing punishment that would have incapacitated most beings. He countered with a barrage of energy blasts from his gauntlet. "You think this fusion makes you stronger?" Vilgax taunted, dodging crystal projectiles. "It only divides your focus." Wrong again, Ben replied, moving with perfect coordination as his 5 partners worked in harmony with him. It multiplies it. Their battle intensified, tearing through the power plant. Ben's composite form demonstrated abilities beyond what any individual transformation could accomplish. Crystal platforms created and immediately heated to explosive temperatures, speed-enhanced multiple-armed combat techniques, tactical maneuvers calculated with Galvan precision but executed with Tetraman strength. Vilgax fought back ferociously, his own patchwork technology granting him capabilities Ben had never seen before. He phased through solid attacks, redirected energy, and at one point seemed to split into multiple versions of himself. Dimensional tech, Ben realized, feeling gray matter's analysis merging with his awareness. He's using breach energy to manipulate local reality. The battle had drawn away from the device, which plumber teams were now attempting to dismantle under heavy fire from Vilgax's drones. You cannot win, Tennyson, Vilgax declared, absorbing a direct hit from Ben's fiery crystal barrage. Even if you destroy this device, I have others. The dimensional boundaries are already weakened beyond repair. It is only a matter of time. Time, Ben repeated thoughtfully. Then, internally to his partners, that gives me an idea. The composite form shifted, focusing more of its energy distribution toward gray matter's aspects. Ben's head enlarged slightly as the shared consciousness prioritized the Galvan's scientific knowledge. The dimensional device, Ben said to his partners while dodging Vilgax's attacks. If we reverse its polarity but maintain the dimensional targeting, we could seal all potential breach points permanently. Gray matter's consciousness indicated agreement but concern. Such a process would require incredible energy and precise calibration. We have the energy, Ben replied, gesturing to their composite form. And working together, we have the precision. The other alien consciousnesses agreed, each offering their specific contributions to the plan. Ben disengaged from direct combat with Vilgax, using XLR-8's speed to create distance. Keep him busy, he shouted to the plumber forces as he raced toward the device. Reaching the machine, Ben interfaced directly with it, using crystal protrusions to connect with its controls while gray matter's intelligence guided the recalibration process. What are you doing? Demanded a plumber technician who'd been working to disable the device. Repurposing it, Ben replied without looking up, his hands moving with impossible speed across the controls. Instead of reopening breaches, we're going to permanently seal them. Alarms blared as Vilgax realized what was happening. Stop him, he commanded his forces, charging toward the device himself. Gwen, Kevin, and Rook arrived just in time, intercepting the warlord. Keep him occupied for 30 more seconds. Ben called to them, continuing the delicate recalibration. Easier said than done. Kevin grunted, absorbing metal from nearby debris to enhance his strength against Vilgax's onslaught. Ben felt the composite form straining to maintain cohesion. This level of integration had never been attempted before, and the energy requirements were enormous. But his partners remained committed, their consciousnesses working in harmony with his own. Almost there, Ben muttered, making final adjustments. The device hummed with redirected power, its energy signature shifting from destructive to restorative. Vilgax broke through the defensive line, charging directly at Ben. You will not deny me victory. Ben turned from the device, standing his ground as the warlord closed in. At the last possible second, he sidestepped with XLR-8 speed, allowing Vilgax's momentum to carry him past, directly into the device's activation field as Ben slammed his hand down on the initiation control. The machine erupted with energy, enveloping Vilgax in a cocoon of dimensional force. The warlord roared in rage and pain as the device did its work, not opening breaches but sealing them, starting with the patchwork dimensional technology integrated into Vilgax's own body. No! Vilgax screamed as pieces of his armor and enhancements began to disintegrate, each returning to its dimension of origin. What have you done? Sent borrowed tech back where it belongs, Ben replied, maintaining the composite form with visible effort. Including everything you stole through the breaches. The energy field expanded outward from the device, washing across Bellwood and beyond. Wherever it encountered technology or material from other dimensions, that material vanished, returned to its proper reality as the dimensional boundaries strengthened and stabilized. Vilgax fell to his knees, his form diminished as his stolen enhancements disappeared one by one. The counterfeit Omnitrix on his arm sparked and crumbled to dust. "It's over, Vilgax," Ben said, approaching the weakened warlord. "Your invasion fleet is being dismantled as we speak, all that cross-dimensional tech returning to where it came from." "This changes nothing, Tennyson," Vilgax snarled, though his voice lacked its usual menace. "I will return, stronger than before." "Yeah, you always say that," Ben replied. "But you'll have to do it the old-fashioned way. No more dimensional shortcuts." Plumber agents moved in to secure the defeated warlord. As they led him away, Ben finally released the composite form, transforming back to human with an exhausted sigh. That was. He staggered slightly, catching himself against a wall. Intense. The Omnitrix glowed softly on his wrist, his partner's presence still very much with him but now contained within the device again. He could feel their satisfaction, and their fatigue. The composite form had demanded enormous energy from all of them. "Ben!" Gwen rushed over, supporting him as his legs threatened to give way. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," he managed a tired smile. "Just need a minute." That form was a lot. "What exactly was that?" Kevin asked, joining them. "Never seen anything like it." "Partnership in its purest form," Ben replied, looking down at the Omnitrix. "All of us working together as equals, not just me using their powers." Rook approached, holstering his proto-tool. "The dimensional restoration effect appears to be spreading globally. Reports indicate all breach points are sealing permanently, and any cross-dimensional materials are returning to their origins." "Good," Ben nodded, standing straighter as his strength began to return. "That should prevent any more artificial breaches, at least using the same method Vilgax tried." As the immediate crisis subsided, plumber teams secured the area and began cleanup operations. Ben found a quiet corner to sit and recover, communicating silently with his partners through the Omnitrix. "That was amazing," he told them, feeling their collective agreement. "I never imagined we could work together like that." Gray Matter's impression came through clearly, pride in the scientific achievement mixed with curiosity about future possibilities. "Definitely something to explore further," Ben agreed. "But maybe with some practice first. That composite form was rough on all of us." He felt Heatblast's presence next, conveying thoughts about identity and belonging, how the experience of true partnership had affirmed his earlier decision to return from Pyros. "I'm glad you came back," Ben told him sincerely. For Arms and Diamondhead conveyed similar sentiments, satisfaction in having found a balance between independence and teamwork, individuality and unity. XLR-8's impression was more complicated, joy in the shared victory, but lingering questions about the future. Ben understood. The speedster had embraced his freedom most enthusiastically, the transition back to a shared existence, even this new more equitable version, represented a significant adjustment. "We'll figure it out together," Ben promised him, promised all of them. Day by day. A shadow fell across him, interrupting the silent communion. Ben looked up to find a familiar figure standing there, Nexus, the Contemplarian, his cosmic form shimmering with points of light against the darkening evening sky. "An unexpected resolution," Nexus observed, his voice as calm and detached as ever. "Most intriguing." Ben stood, instantly alert despite his fatigue. "Come to check on your experiment?" "Naturally." Nexus made no attempt to deny the characterization. Though the outcome defies precedent. In all previous liberation studies, the separated entities either remained permanently divided or returned to complete integration. This partnership you've developed represents a new paradigm. "Sorry to mess up your data," Ben replied, not sounding sorry at all. "But we're not lab rats. We're people making our own choices." "That was always the point of the experiment," Nexus countered. To observe what choices would emerge when consciousness was granted autonomy. Ben felt indignation rise from his partners within the Omnitrix. You risked the entire dimension for an academic study? Knowledge requires risk, Nexus stated, as if this were obvious. And the dimensional instabilities were a known variable. Part of what we wished to observe was how separated consciousnesses would respond to crisis. Well, observe this, Ben gestured to the Omnitrix. We chose partnership. Not your forced separation, not Vilgax's forced control, our own path. Nexus studied him with those disconcerting starfield eyes. Indeed. A fascinating choice. One that raises new questions about the nature of consciousness and identity. That's all this is to you, isn't it? Just questions and data points. Ben shook his head in disgust. Did you ever consider the harm your experiment might have caused? The lives that could have been lost if those breaches had expanded unchecked? We would have intervened before complete dimensional collapse, Nexus assured him. The Contemplarians study civilizations, we do not destroy them needlessly. Needlessly? Ben repeated incredulously. So there are times when destruction is necessary for your research? Nexus didn't respond directly to that accusation. Instead, he gestured to the Omnitrix. May I speak with them? The consciousness matrices who chose to return. Ben hesitated, then mentally consulted with his partners. After receiving their collective agreement, he nodded. They can hear you. You were offered complete independence, Nexus addressed the Omnitrix directly. Freedom to exist as autonomous beings, to define yourselves beyond your connection to Benjamin Tennyson. Yet you chose to return to a connected state. Why? Ben felt the response forming collectively among his partners, not words exactly, but a unified sentiment that he translated aloud. Because freedom isn't just about separation, Ben explained, channeling their thoughts. True freedom includes the right to choose connection. To decide who we partner with and how. We chose this arrangement because it honors both our individuality and our shared purpose. Nexus absorbed this, his cosmic face unreadable. And you, Benjamin Tennyson? You who wielded them as tools for years, what did you learn from temporary powerlessness? That I'm more than the Omnitrix, Ben answered honestly. And they're more than just powers for me to use. We're strongest together, but only when that togetherness comes from mutual choice and respect. A most unexpected conclusion, Nexus mused. In thousands of liberation experiments across multiple dimensions, we have never observed this particular outcome, a voluntary renegotiation of terms leading to symbiotic reintegration. Maybe you need better experimental design, Ben suggested dryly. Or maybe just ask people what they want instead of forcing situations on them. Nexus actually seemed to consider this critique. Perhaps. The Contemplarians have always valued observation over intervention. But your case suggests there may be merits to more collaborative approaches. You think? The cosmic being's form began to shimmer, indicating his imminent departure. The dimensional boundaries have been restored beyond their previous stability. Your partnership has proven more effective than either complete separation or hierarchical control. A most valuable data point for our continuing studies of consciousness. Glad we could help, Ben replied sarcastically. Next time, maybe just send a survey. There is value in your suggestion, Nexus acknowledged, apparently missing the sarcasm. Your species continues to surprise us, Benjamin Tennyson. We will be watching your progress with great interest. Of course you will, Ben muttered as Nexus dissolved into points of light that rose into the night sky and vanished. Gwen approached once the cosmic being had departed. What was that about? Just our friendly neighborhood interdimensional scientist checking his lab results, Ben sighed. Apparently we're the first test subjects to choose door number 3 instead of staying separated or going back to the original arrangement. Does that bother you? Gwen asked perceptively. Being part of an experiment? Ben considered the question, feeling his partner's perspectives merging with his own thoughts. It would if we hadn't made our own choices despite his meddling. He might have created the situation, but we decided what to do with it. He looked down at the Omnitrix, now calmer on his wrist but still radiating the presence of his 5 partners. And I think we all ended up somewhere better than where we started. The weeks that followed brought adjustment and discovery as Ben and his transformation partners explored their new relationship. The symbiotic Omnitrix functioned differently than its predecessor. Transformations felt more collaborative, with distinct personalities and perspectives influencing each form. Ben could communicate directly with his partners while in human form, receiving impressions and occasionally clear thoughts. They, in turn, could suggest transformations when appropriate, though the final decision remained mutual. Most significantly, they could emerge temporarily from the Omnitrix even without transformation. Not as fully physical beings like during the separation, but as energy projections capable of limited interaction with the world, allowing for conversation, consultation, and companionship beyond merely becoming transformation options. A month after defeating Vilgax, Ben sat on the roof of his house, watching the sunset. Beside him, a projection of heat blast manifested, glowing softly in the fading light. "Still weird seeing you without actually transforming," Ben commented. "Weird for me too," Heat Blast replied, his voice carrying the distinctive crackle of flames though at a lower volume than his physical form. "But good weird. Any regrets? About coming back from Pyros, I mean." Heat Blast considered the question. "Sometimes I miss the lava flows. The feeling of being surrounded by others who burn." He looked at his semi-translucent, flaming hands. "But this is where I belong. Where I chose to be. Even with the limitations." Ben gestured to Heat Blast's projected form, which couldn't interact physically with the environment the way a full transformation could. "Freedom with limitations chosen voluntarily is better than freedom without purpose," Heat Blast replied. "The Pyronites never fully accepted me anyway. I was an outsider there, shaped by experiences they couldn't understand. And here I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be, shaped by our shared experiences but distinct enough to have my own perspective on them." Their conversation was interrupted by XLR-8's projection appearing, the speedster's energy form zipping around the roof before settling beside them. "You two getting philosophical again?" he asked, vibrating with his characteristic restless energy even in projection form. "Just talking about choices," Ben shrugged. "Speaking of choices," XLR-8 said, "when are we testing that composite form again?" "That was wild. When we've all had more practice with the symbiotic connection," Ben replied. "Gray matter says we need to better understand the energy requirements before attempting it regularly." As if summoned by his name, gray matter's tiny projection appeared. "Indeed. The composite form represents an unprecedented level of consciousness integration. Fascinating from a scientific perspective, but potentially destabilizing if used incorrectly." Diamond Head and 4 Arms manifested next, their projections completing the gathering. "Team meeting on the roof?" 4 Arms asked with a grin. "Just happened that way," Ben replied, looking around at all 5 of his partners manifested simultaneously, something that would have been impossible under the old Omnitrix system. "But since you're all here, how's everyone adjusting to the new arrangement?" "Better than expected," Diamond Head admitted. "The ability to emerge as projections makes a significant difference. We're not just waiting around to be used anymore. And the partial consciousness sharing during transformation is fascinating," Gray Matter added. "We experience the world through your senses while simultaneously maintaining our distinct perspective. Plus we can talk you out of doing stupid stuff now," 4 Arms pointed out with a laugh. "Or encourage the fun stupid stuff," XLR-8 countered. Ben grinned, watching his partners interact with each other as much as with him. This, more than anything, demonstrated how much had changed. They weren't just aspects of his transformations anymore, they were individuals with relationships extending beyond their connection to him. "So," he said after their banter subsided, "no regrets from anyone? About choosing to reconnect with the Omnitrix?" The aliens exchanged glances before Diamond Head spoke for the group. We didn't return to the Omnitrix, Ben. Not exactly. We formed a partnership with you. There's a difference. A crucial distinction, Grey Matter agreed. The old arrangement was hierarchical, you controlled when and how we manifested. This symbiotic connection grants us agency while still allowing for transformation capabilities. What they're trying to say, Heat Blast translated, is that we're good with how things turned out. Ben nodded, genuine relief and gratitude washing over him. Good. Because I am too. The sun had nearly set, painting the sky in colors that reminded Ben of alien worlds he'd visited over the years, worlds that were also home to the beings now connected to him through the Omnitrix. You know, he said thoughtfully, Nexus got one thing right. This whole separation thing did force us all to figure out who we really are, with or without each other. And what did you figure out, Ben Tennyson? Grey Matter asked curiously. Ben smiled, looking at the Omnitrix, no longer just a tool or weapon, but a connection to 5 distinct consciousnesses who had chosen to partner with him. That being a hero was never about having the right alien for the job, he replied. It was about making the right choices with whatever abilities you have. And that goes for all of us. The aliens' projections nodded in agreement, each having come to similar realizations through their brief period of independence. They had discovered that their heroic instincts weren't simply programmed by the Omnitrix or imposed by Ben, they were intrinsic to their unique consciousnesses, shaped by shared experiences but authentic nonetheless. As darkness fell over Bellwood, the projections began to fade, their energy returning to the Omnitrix to conserve power. But their presence remained, a constant reminder of the partnership that had emerged from crisis and choice. Ben looked up at the stars, wondering if Nexus was indeed watching from some cosmic vantage point, still collecting data on his experiment. If he was, Ben hoped the Contemplarian had learned something valuable, that true freedom wasn't found in either complete separation or unwilling integration, but in the conscious choice to connect with others while maintaining your distinct identity. The Omnitrix glowed softly on his wrist, its light different now, warmer somehow, more alive. 5 consciousnesses plus his own, working together by choice rather than necessity. Hero time, Ben murmured, not as a prelude to transformation but as an acknowledgement of what they had all become, heroes in their own right, choosing to be stronger together than apart. The adventure that had begun with unexpected separation had led to a deeper understanding of identity and partnership. Whatever challenges came next, they would face them not as wielder and tool, but as a team united by choice, respect, and the shared commitment to use their unique abilities for good. In the end, that was the most heroic transformation of all. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.